Chapter 4014. During the conversation, Qin Feiyang had already passed a few more heavenly tribulations. At this moment, the 3,000 clones had finally replicated all the ultimate mysteries of the mad scientist and the others. 57,000 ultimate mysteries floated in the air, exuding an aura that could destroy the world. The Divine King and the human race supreme being couldn't help but be shocked when they saw this scene. This was the eye of heaven? It was indeed ridiculously strong. Coupled with the 3,000 clones, it was undoubtedly like adding wings to a tiger. "Where's your father?" The Divine King turned to look at Ryuko and asked. He was restrained by Qin Batian. Ryuko said in a deep voice, "Qin Batian?" The Divine King was stunned. The monarch and the human race supreme being were also puzzled. Ryuko said, "This Qin Batian is my aunt's child." "What?" The monarch's eyes trembled. "The child of the Divine Kingdom's princess, his grandson." Last time he asked Qin Feiyang, but Qin Feiyang didn't say anything. Only now did he know that his grandson was Qin Batian. Wait, the human race supreme being seemed to have suddenly thought of something and said in surprise, "Since he's your aunt's child, he's also your cousin. He's younger than you. How could he have the ability to restrain your father?" Hearing this, Ryuko suddenly felt that the human race supreme being was humiliating him. Of course, the human race supreme being didn't mean to humiliate him at all. It was he who felt this way. He was younger than him, but his strength was many times stronger than him. Of course, he felt uncomfortable. "Speak." The monarch frowned. Ryuko quivered and hurriedly looked at the monarch and said, "Grandpa, not only does he have 3,000 clones, but he also grasps the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws and has integrated the will of the heavenly Tao." "What?" "The ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws." The monarch's eyes trembled. This was his grandson? The Divine King and the human race supreme being were also in disbelief. A place like the Sky Cloud Realm could actually produce such a powerhouse? It was truly inconceivable. The Divine King sighed. "The bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon race is indeed extraordinary." "No. This Qin Batian doesn't have the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon," Ryuko said. The Divine King was stunned. He didn't even have the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon, yet he still possessed such talent? To hell with it. The monarch was unable to remain calm. As he thought about the young man, he looked at Qin Feiyang. He had always looked down on humans. They believed that humans were inherently inferior to the purple gold divine dragons. It was also because of this that he had set the clan's rules, forbidding the purple gold divine dragons from marrying humans. This was because the union between humans and purple gold divine dragons was tantamount to blasphemy against the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragons. So back then, when he discovered that his own daughter was actually with the human emperor of the Sky Cloud Realm, he was extremely angry and personally came to the Sky Cloud Realm. According to the Emperor of Feathers and others, the beast god of the Sky Cloud Sea was killed by the monarch at that time. However, he never expected that. After all these years, the descendants of his daughter in the Sky Cloud Realm were each more outstanding than the other. Qin Feiyang, Qin Batian. One had comprehended the ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death, and the other had comprehended the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws. Such talent and such achievements were far beyond the descendants of the Divine Kingdom's purple gold divine dragon race. At this moment, the monarch's mind was in a mess. He felt that the principles he had once adhered to had now become a joke. Boom! In the distance, the battle between Heavenly Lord Ji and the young man had already reached its climax. However, no matter how dangerous and intense the battle was, the young man still looked like he hadn't woken up yet. Sensing the fluctuations of the battle between the two, the monarch and the other two also confirmed Ryuko's words. This Qin Batian had indeed mastered the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws. Crack! Another heavenly tribulation descended. 57,000 ultimate mysteries hovered in the sky, emitting a terrifying aura. It was already enough to help Qin Feiyang block the first 98 heavenly tribulations, because the 98 heavenly tribulations required a total of more than 40,000 ultimate mysteries. When the 99th heavenly tribulation descended, Qin Feiyang would have to replicate it again. If the monarch and the other 2 didn't come, he was confident that he could successfully pass the heavenly tribulation. But now, he was very nervous. "You are madman, Mo." Suddenly, the divine king looked at the madman standing in front of him. Because the madman was too eye-catching now, his 10,000 feet body emitted an explosive aura. "Yes." The madman nodded and laughed. "That's me. Who the hell are you?" "Madman, you are too presumptuous. This is the divine king of the god race." Jiang Yunshuang stood beside the divine king, his eyes filled with anger. How dare he speak so rudely to the divine king? The divine king of the god race. Everyone's pupils shrank. The divine king of the god race must be the ruler of the god race. No wonder even Ryuko had to bow respectfully when he saw him. What about this one? Long Chen looked at the supreme being of the human race. This is the supreme being of the human race of the divine kingdom. Ryuko smiled proudly. Supreme being of the human race. The madman and the others tensed up. A monarch, a divine king, and a supreme being. These were the 3 giants of the divine kingdom. Their identities and statuses were even higher than divine Lord G's. Their strength was probably above divine Lord G's. Putting everything else aside, the 3 of them had definitely grasped the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws and merged with the will of the heavenly Tao. The pressure in everyone's hearts instantly multiplied. I've heard a lot about the source of all evil, but this is the first time I've seen it with my own eyes. Show it to me, let me experience it. The divine king took a step forward and stood in the sky with a hint of provocation in his cold eyes. The madman stared at the divine king, his eyes flashing red. Seeing this, Long Chen thought, "Don't be impulsive. You might not be her match." The madman was silent for a while and laughed. "Even if I'm not her match, do we have a choice now? At most, we will die here." Boom! As his voice fell, he raised his mountain-like arm and slapped at the divine king, roaring, "If I win, you will immediately return to the divine kingdom." "As long as you have the ability." The divine king spoke, and the mark of the god race between his eyebrows erupted with a sacred light. Clang! Immediately after, the power of time surged out, and the ultimate mysteries appeared. The divine king grabbed the time divine sword and slashed at the madman's giant hand. "Lord divine king, be careful. The power of the source of all evil can be attached to his body," Jiang Yunshuang reminded. But the divine king didn't have any reaction, nor did he stop. The madman laughed and slapped down. Accompanied by a loud clang, the time divine sword shattered on the spot, but a wound was left on his palm. But this injury couldn't even be considered a flesh wound to him. The giant hand slammed down. The divine king activated the momentary time and instantly retreated from the range of the giant hand. Boom! The madman's palm hit the ground, and a loud explosion occurred. A giant palm print appeared on the ground. "Don't dodge if you have the guts." The madman's aura was like a rainbow as he charged forward. His fist was surrounded by blood-red flames. It was the power of the source of all evil. The divine king turned a deaf ear to the madman's clamor. The time divine sword appeared once more, and the terrifying sharpness seemed to be able to sever the river of time. With a loud bang, the sword tip collided with the madman's fist, and a world-destroying might erupted. Drops of blood dripped down from the madman's fist. Kacha! But at the next moment, the divine sword of time shattered. The madman roared as his fist shattered the sky. Just as the Divine King was about to be hit, the Divine King activated the momentary time again and retreated. Why are you running? The dignified Divine King of the God race doesn't dare to fight with a junior like me? The madman laughed. The law of destruction and the law of time, two ultimate mysteries, appeared. The power of the source of all evil surged out and merged with the ultimate mysteries. Boom! A monstrous might suddenly erupted. Then the madman waved his hand, and the two ultimate mysteries charged toward the Divine King. At the same time, he raised his fist once more, and an unparalleled power erupted as he charged toward the Divine King. The power of the source of all evil can indeed increase the power of the body and the laws at the same time. It can't be underestimated. The human race, Sovereign muttered. For an existence of his level to say such a thing, it was enough to show the madman's strength. The madman went berserk. The Divine King didn't retreat. He used his ultimate mysteries to deal with the madman and didn't clash head-on. It seemed that the madman had the upper hand. But Ryuko, the white-eyed wolf, and the others weren't happy at all. Instead, they were worried, because the Divine King was too calm and composed. Rather than saying that he was fighting the madman, it was more like he was testing the madman's strength. Qin Feiyang was also paying attention to the battlefield. With the help of the 3,000 clones, he didn't need to worry about it for the time being. But at the same time, he was also deeply worried. Several dozen people passed by. Although the madman was incomparably valiant, the Divine King wasn't injured at all. Instead, the madman's fists and arms were left with wounds. How long are you going to hide? The madman roared. As you wish. The Divine King stepped forward and thrust out a palm, finally facing the madman head-on. The madman's expression froze. He actually intended to fight him head-on bare-chested? Didn't he know that the strength of his body had already surpassed the ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws? What a naive person! Boom! The madman punched out, and the power of the source of all evil roared out in all directions like a tide. The Divine King was only a little over 7 meters tall. Facing the madman's massive body, he was like an ant facing an elephant. But the moment their fists collided, a terrifying power surged out from the Divine King's palm. The madman immediately sensed this power, and a trace of disbelief appeared on his face. The next moment, a terrifying aura surged out from the two of them. The two of them were in a deadlock in the air, and their powers constantly clashed. Boom! Several seconds later, the two of them grunted at the same time and retreated. What? Qin Feiyang and the others also looked at this scene in shock. The Divine King's physical strength were also so terrifying. This can't be real. They were already familiar with the power of the God race's mark. Whether it was Jiang Yunshuang, Jiang Chun, or Jiang Xing, they could only increase the power of their laws. They couldn't increase the strength of their bodies. What was going on? Chapter 40:15. There was dead silence. Madman stabilized his footsteps and looked at the Divine King in disbelief. His feeling was the most vivid. The power that the Divine King erupted with was no weaker than his. But where did this power come from? The mark of the God race didn't seem to have the effect of strengthening the body and strength. Shua! The Divine King attacked again, and it was still a light palm. This daddy doesn't believe this. Madman's eyes turned cold. The power of all evil surged as he threw out a punch. This time, the madman could clearly see a sacred power erupting from the God King's palm as well. This was the aura of the mark of the God race. Boom! The fist and palm collided once again. The power of all evil and the power of the God race opposed each other and finally erupted with an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. The two retreated again, their faces somewhat pale. Obviously, these two powers were evenly matched. Madman said in disbelief, "Why is your mark different from Jiang Yunshuang's?" because this sovereign is the divine king. Their marks were all bestowed by this sovereign, so naturally they can't be compared. The divine king said indifferently. There was a trace of arrogance between his brows. The mark of the god race was bestowed by her, Madman murmured. Could this principle be the same as the blood demon race? The blood demon race with the mark could borrow the power of the evil moon and evil sun? Actually, we can also be considered old enemies. You represent evil, while this sovereign represents light and holiness. Our encounter was destined. However, evil will never be able to defeat light. As the divine king finished speaking, the ultimate meaning of the law of time appeared once again, erupting with a terrifying will. It was as if the heavenly Tao had descended, causing all things to tremble. Will of the heavenly Tao. Madman's expression changed. Not bad. Will of the heavenly Tao. The mark of the god race, plus the will of the heavenly Tao. With your two ultimate meanings, you don't even have the qualifications to be this sovereign's opponent. The divine king waved his hand, and the time god sword immediately tore through the sky, slashing towards Madman. Is that so? Madman smiled savagely. The law of thunder, the law of slaughter, the law of space-time, and the law of destruction were all activated at the same time. He must have been scared silly. Even ultimate laws are useless, let alone ordinary ultimate laws. Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang looked at each other with mocking expressions. A loser like you has the right to mock me? The madman looked at Ryuko and Madman with disdain. His four ultimates immediately attacked the time god sword. Ryuko clenched his fists. As the saying goes, when you hit someone, don't hit their face, and when you scold someone, don't expose their shortcomings. But this bastard actually called them losers in front of everyone. Wasn't this clearly embarrassing them? This bastard must die. Otherwise, they would have to bear the name of a defeated opponent for the rest of their lives. In the blink of an eye, the four ultimates collided with the time god sword. The divine sword of time, which possessed the will of the heavenly Tao, could be described as invincible. Madman's four ultimate profundities were shattered on the spot, unable to resist at all. Will of the heavenly Tao. Even if the heavenly Tao descends, I'm not afraid. The madman roared, and the power of the source of all evil surged out as he punched the time god sword. Boom! A destructive aura roared in all directions. The madman's arm was torn open, and blood flowed out. But he didn't retreat. He raised his other arm and threw another punch at the time sword. This arm also shattered on the spot, and blood and flesh flew everywhere. I, the madman, will not succumb to a will. Shatter for me. The madman had simply reached the point of madness. He smashed his head against the time god's sword, and blood immediately flowed out. Finally, with a cracking sound, the time god sword that possessed the will of the heavenly Tao shattered into pieces and dissipated between heaven and earth. And at this moment, the madman had already become a man of blood. But the courage he displayed shocked the three giants of the divine kingdom. Although there were countless geniuses in the divine kingdom, no one could compare to this person in terms of courage and insight. If such a person was given enough time, he would definitely become a terrifying existence in the future. Senior brother, quickly retreat. Qin Feiyang said anxiously. There's no way out. The madman shook his head. They originally thought that with the arrival of the youth and the restraint of Heavenly Lord Ji, they would be able to escape danger. But who would have thought? Before they could rejoice, the three giants of the divine kingdom personally arrived. This was even more terrifying than the arrival of Heavenly Lord Ji. Did the heavens really want them to die? I won't accept this. The madman roared, and a wave of death energy erupted like a volcano. In an instant, this place seemed to have become a purgatory. Boom! Accompanied by a loud explosion, a huge object appeared in the sky. It was as if hell had appeared, and it emitted a terrifying aura. 18 levels of hell. The white-eyed wolf and the others were overjoyed. They never thought that the madman would actually comprehend the ultimate meaning of the law of death at this time. Crack! Boom! What followed was a sky full of tribulation clouds. Bolts of blood-red lightning roared in the sky like giant pythons. Oh no! Long Chen's face changed. It was supposed to be a good thing, but under the current situation, it had undoubtedly become one disaster after another, because the madman was going to go through the tribulation. Although the heavenly tribulation of the law of death wasn't comparable to the heavenly tribulation of the law of life and death, it still required everyone to do their best and the help of the 3,000 incarnations. But now, Qin Feiyang controlled the 3,000 incarnations, and Qin Feiyang also had to face the heavenly tribulation himself. How could he divert his attention to help the madman? Even if Qin Feiyang could divert his attention to help the madman, the three giants of the divine kingdom wouldn't allow it, because both Qin Feiyang and the madman had shown enough potential to threaten the divine kingdom. The three giants would definitely take this opportunity to strangle them in the cradle. They're really talented. Even I don't want to kill them. The king looked at the madman, then looked at Qin Feiyang, and sighed with emotion. The human race's sovereign and the divine king also had a trace of admiration in their eyes. But admiration was one thing. The threat still had to be eliminated. Otherwise, if they were allowed to grow like this, the divine kingdom would definitely suffer a great disaster in the future. Boom! Accompanied by a terrifying aura, 3,000 incarnations immediately appeared in the void behind the king. It seems that no matter what, we can't escape death today. Long Chin smiled bitterly. What's there to fear about death? I only hate that I can't drag a few of them down with me. The white-eyed wolf clenched his fists. Although they couldn't defeat the king and the other two, they could risk their lives to kill Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. But so what if they killed the two? Both of them left their souls in the divine kingdom. Not long after killing them, they could be reborn. Blame us for being too naive. We shouldn't have believed their agreement and blood oath. Yin Ziang sighed. The divine kingdom, you don't even have the slightest spirit of the contract. You are really unworthy of being the overlord of the divine kingdom. No, you are clowns, disgusting. Long Chen glared at the king and the other two. If the older generation of the divine kingdom didn't intervene, the younger generation of the divine kingdom wouldn't be able to stop Qin Feiyang and the madman from crossing the tribulation. Not to mention, they were forced into such a desperate situation. Haha. You can't win, so you start to curse? I really admire you. But now all you can do is talk. This is the gap between your sky cloud realm and our divine kingdom. Do you understand now? No matter how you struggle, in the end, you will die like an ant without a burial place. Ryuko laughed wildly. Shut up. The one who has the least right to speak here is you. How many times have you come to the sky cloud realm? Count it yourself. Which time didn't you run away like a stray dog? Li Feng shouted angrily. Without the king and the other two, you dare to be so arrogant? Don't talk nonsense with him. He is a clown. Talking to him is a disgrace. The white-eyed wolf sneered. You still dare to be arrogant with me? Wait, I won't let you die so easily. I will let you taste a life worse than death. Ryuko stared at Li Feng and the white-eyed wolf, his eyes full of resentment. Boom! At this moment, the madman's tribulation descended. But with his current state, he probably couldn't even withstand the first tribulation, because now his injuries were too serious. Senior brother, come to me. Let's cross the tribulation together, Qin Feiyang shouted. The madman took a step forward. His body quickly shrank, returning to his original state and landing beside Qin Feiyang. The tribulation also followed. The three ultimate profound meanings were annihilated on the spot. Sure enough, the tribulation of the strongest law was similar to the tribulation of the sovereign divine weapon. However, although there was Qin Feiyang's help, everyone's situation was precarious at this moment. The king took a deep breath, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "I will ask you one last time. Will you follow me to the divine kingdom? And I can let the madman, the golden-winged wolf king, also enter the divine kingdom." What? Ryuko's eyes trembled. Grandpa still hasn't given up on persuading these people to join the divine kingdom? If Qin Feiyang really agreed, with the strength and potential of Qin Feiyang, the madman and the white-eyed wolf, their status in the divine kingdom would definitely be above him. No, this kind of thing is absolutely not allowed to happen. Qin Feiyang looked at the king and was silent for a while. His eyes gradually flashed with a firm light and said, "As long as you promise me that you will never invade the sky cloud realm again, I can go to the divine kingdom with you." "What if I don't agree?" the king asked. "Then I will accompany the destruction of the sky cloud realm." Qin Feiyang's voice was sonorous and powerful. "No regrets?" the king said. "No regrets," Qin Feiyang said word by word. What a good no regrets. The king took a deep breath, and his eyes suddenly became sharp, and said, "Then you will be destroyed." As his voice fell, the 3,000 incarnations behind him activated their ultimate mysteries, which were also the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws. Each ultimate mysteries contained the will of the heavens, exuding a destructive aura. Swish! At the same time, Long Qin, the white-eyed wolf, Yun Ziang, the masked Azura, and Li Zhongxing, the 3 of them, unanimously stood in front of the madman and Qin Feiyang. They didn't say a single word, but their actions already represented their determination, sharing honor and disgrace, sharing life and death. Chapter 4016. Even Long Qin didn't flinch. She even forgot about her hatred for Qin Feiyang and Madman. It wasn't because of the fear before death that made her forget, but because she knew that the divine kingdom wouldn't let them go, let alone the sky cloud realm. Even if she could survive now, she would definitely die in the future. Since she was about to die, why should she cling to the past? Don't be afraid. Long Qin grabbed Long Qin's hand and smiled. "I'm not afraid. I'm just worried about Mother." Long Qin lowered his head, his face full of sadness. Once they died here, no one in the sky cloud realm could stop the divine kingdom. At that time, it would be a scene of misery and suffering. Long Xuan naturally wouldn't be spared. "Mother," Long Qin looked up at the sky and murmured, "Father, where are you? Do you know what we are facing now? I don't beg you to save me and Qin, but I beg you to save Mother and the billions of people in the sky cloud realm." "Father, did you hear me?" Long Qin clenched his hands and looked up at the sky and roared. His face was full of sadness. Sigh. White-eyed wolf and the others sighed and couldn't help but sympathize with the siblings. Boom. Opposite. The monarch glanced at the group of people indifferently. With a wave of his hand, the 18,000 ultimate laws activated by the 3,000 incarnations suddenly turned into a torrent and rushed toward Qin Feiyang and the others. At the same time, dragons, Long Xuan, who was sitting on the balcony of the attic, suddenly broke the teacup on the table. "Long Xuan, what's wrong with you?" Ling Long hurriedly ran out of the house and looked at Long Xuan. Long Xuan didn't speak, but as if he sensed something, he looked up in the direction of the western continent and murmured, Qin, please be safe." On the other side, the transfer of the western continent's people was coming to an end. Feather Emperor, Little Rabbit, and Shuezu, who were busy, simultaneously stopped and turned to look in the direction of the Shen family village. There was an uncontrollable uneasiness deep in their hearts. "Azure Dragon, Sea Lion Emperor, I'll leave the rest to you." Suddenly, Little Rabbit looked at Azure Dragon and the others who were not far away and instructed them. Then she opened up a space-time tunnel. The moment the space-time tunnel appeared, a destructive aura roared out from within. This aura came from the sky above the Shin family village. What are they going through? The little rabbit, the feather emperor, and the blood ancestors' eyes trembled as they entered the space-time tunnel. This aura made even them feel despair. Above the Shun family village, 18,000 ultimate profound meanings flooded the sky, and all of them carried the will of the heavenly Tao. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and said with a smile, "You're already at death's door. What's the point of transcending the tribulation? Let us make one last effort for the Sky Cloud realm." "All right." Madman nodded. Long Qin and the others looked at each other and smiled. Boom! Along with a terrifying aura, everyone activated their ultimate profound. The sovereign's divine weapons were also fully awakened. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and more than 50,000 ultimate mysteries were ready to be unleashed. Feiyang! At this moment, not far away in the void, a voice sounded. Qin Feiyang and the others' faces changed. They looked up and saw the blood ancestor and the other two anxiously rushing out of the space-time tunnel. "What are you doing here? Run!" Madman roared. They were simply here to die. This is the responsibility of the older generation. The Feather Emperor smiled faintly. "That's right. You youngsters aren't afraid of death. How can us three old guys be deserters?" The blood ancestor nodded. "The Sky Cloud realm is our home. Let us protect it with our lives." The little rabbit took out a jar of divine wine and drank it in one gulp. Boom! The aura of the three erupted. Streaks of ultimate laws and ultimate profundities appeared one after another as they charged toward the monarch and the other two without hesitation. "Three ants dare to join in the fun." Ryuko snorted coldly. 3,000 clones activated. 6,000 ultimate mysteries turned into a surging wave that blotted out the sky and covered the earth as it charged towards the three. "Bastard, when I return from reincarnation, I will never let you go. Kill." Madman stared at Ryuko and roared. A total of more than 50,000 ultimate profound immediately charged toward the 18,000 ultimate profound of the king. Boom! A series of deafening noises suddenly exploded between heaven and earth. The earth was pulverized and the void was annihilated. The sky collapsed crazily. The end of the world was nothing more than this. The ultimate profound of the will of the heavenly Tao was simply heaven-defying. Qin Feiyang's 3,000 clones replicated more than 50,000 ultimate profound. But at this moment, they were like withered trees, constantly collapsing. However, even with the will of the heavenly Tao, it couldn't stop their fighting spirit and anger. The monarch's 18,000 ultimates were also being shattered one after another. But in the end, the king still had the upper hand. A terrifying fluctuation instantly spread across half of the western continent. Mountains and rivers collapsed one after another. The earth cracked open into a shocking abyss. Fortunately, almost all the living beings in the western continent had moved away. Otherwise, the earth would be stained with blood. Poof! The aura roared. Qin Feiyang and the others were sent flying, their bodies constantly cracking. All the sovereign divine weapons were also shattered. On the other side, the blood ancestor and the other two were also drenched in blood, facing Ryuko's 3,000 clones. At the same time, two heavenly tribulations descended, heading straight for Qin Feiyang and Madman. Although we are not brothers in this life, we are better than brothers. I hope we can be brothers in the next life. Madman grinned at Qin Feiyang with a bloody face. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Long Qin also turned to Long Qin and smiled. Don't be so naughty in the next life. After all, not every big brother can tolerate you like I can. Okay. Long Qin nodded. Sister Feng, I will marry you in the next life. White-Eyed Wolf also roared. Okay. Fire Dance, who was standing in the black tortoise realm, also nodded with tears streaming down her face. Just as the group of people was about to be killed, two figures descended from the sky. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? I actually saw the ice dragon and the small beast. Madman muttered. I think my eyes are playing tricks on me too. Qin Feiyang smiled. Father? Long Qin and Long Qin also thought their eyes were playing tricks on them, but when the two figures descended in front of them, they were immediately stunned. They didn't seem to be playing tricks on them. It's them. The group immediately became excited, and the fire of hope burned in their eyes. Although Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, and Madman hated the ice dragon and the small beast, they couldn't help but feel happy at this moment. Boom! The golden small beast opened its mouth. A shocking scene appeared. The ultimate meaning of this world, including Ryuko's ultimate meaning, and even the two heavenly tribulations heading for Madman and the white-eyed wolf, all poured into the golden small beast's mouth. That's right. Its palm-sized body actually swallowed all the ultimate meaning and the two heavenly tribulations in one go. Moreover, after it swallowed them, these heavenly tribulations and ultimate meaning didn't cause any harm to it. This scene, not only Qin Feiyang and the others, even the king's trio, Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang, were dumbfounded. One must know, the king's ultimate meaning contained the will of the heavenly Tao. Although there were only a few hundred ultimate meaning left after the previous collision, it was enough to kill anyone present. Moreover, of the two heavenly tribulations, one was the strongest law, the other was the heavenly tribulation of the life and death law. How terrifying was this! But now they were all swallowed by the golden small beast in one go? What kind of joke was this? How heaven-defying did one need to be to do this? Thinking of the 10,000-year promise with the small beast, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but smile bitterly. Not to mention 10,000 years. Even if he was given another 100,000 years, he might not be a match for this golden small beast. Who are you guys? The king's trio came back to their senses and immediately looked at Ice Dragon and the small beast. You guys are not qualified to know, the small beast said proudly. The trio's eyes turned cold. Don't be impulsive. You guys are no match for them. Suddenly, an ethereal voice sounded. There's someone else. Qin Feiyang and the others were bewildered as they looked around, but no one appeared. Ice Dragon, heaven-swallowing beast. What is the meaning of this? You actually came to protect them personally. The ethereal voice sounded again. We should be asking you this. A cold light flashed in Ice Dragon's eyes as he glanced at the void and said angrily, Qin Feiyang and the king have clearly made an agreement. Why don't you guys abide by it? It's just an agreement. Do you guys really take it seriously? The ethereal voice said. Since it's an agreement, we should abide by it. If you don't even have the minimum integrity and spirit of a contract, do you still deserve to be the ruler of a world? Ice Dragon snorted coldly. The ruler of a world. When Qin Feiyang and the others heard this, their eyes couldn't help but tremble. The meaning of these words was obvious. The owner of this voice was the ruler of the divine kingdom. Hearing Ice Dragon's scolding, the voice went silent. Humph. If you guys didn't have this agreement with Qin Feiyang, even if you guys destroyed the Sky Cloud realm and killed all the living beings here, we wouldn't interfere. Just like last time, when the divine kingdom came to the Sky Cloud realm and plunged the Sky Cloud realm and hell into misery and suffering, did we interfere? I hate people who don't keep their promises the most. Ice Dragon took a step forward and a monstrous aura rolled out. The king's trio, who were such terrifying existences, actually spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. Their faces instantly turned pale. Grandfather, Lord Divine King, Lord Supreme, Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang quickly ran to the trio's side, their faces full of horror. Just how strong is this ice dragon? Just a single aura was enough to severely injure the three rulers of the divine kingdom. Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other and couldn't help but feel their scalps go numb. Every time this ice dragon attacked, it was shocking because it was stronger than the previous one. Kacha! At this time, the madman and Qin Feiyang's heavenly tribulation descended again. Qin Feiyang quivered and quickly activated the 3,000 incarnations and the Eye of Heaven. The madman, the white-eyed wolf, the Longqin siblings Li Feng, Yun Ziying, the Master Jura, and Li Zhongxing all activated their ultimate techniques without waiting for Qin Feiyang's command. The Eye of Heaven immediately began to replicate. But now it was too late, because the Eye of Heaven required a long time to replicate. It wasn't realistic to go to the Black Tortoise world to replicate now, because once he entered the Black Tortoise world, the heavenly tribulation would also appear in the Black Tortoise world. With the power of the heavenly tribulation, if it appeared in the Black Tortoise world, the Black Tortoise world would be instantly destroyed. Chapter 40:17. I didn't die in the hands of those bastards from the divine kingdom, but now I'm going to die under the heavenly tribulation. Damn it! Lunatic roared. This was also the fault of the divine kingdom. If it weren't for the king, Qin Feiyang's more than 50,000 ultimate profound meanings would have been enough to block the first few dozen heavenly tribulations. Therefore, Lunatic hated the divine kingdom even more. Boom! Seeing that the two were about to be killed by the heavenly tribulation, Longqin hurriedly looked at Ice Dragon and was about to speak. Don't call me father. Ice Dragon transmitted its voice. Hearing this, Longqin's face suddenly turned pale. What did this mean? Didn't he want to acknowledge her as his daughter? At the same time, the golden small beast turned its head and looked at Qin Feiyang and Lunatic. It opened its mouth slightly and swallowed the two heavenly tribulations in one gulp. Lunatic and Qin Feiyang were stunned. What was going on with this small beast? Not only did it save them, but it also helped them pass the heavenly tribulation? They didn't believe that the small beast would be so kind. However, this ability was really amazing. It was as if in front of this small beast, there was nothing it couldn't solve in one gulp. They really couldn't figure it out. How could such a small body contain such a terrifying heavenly tribulation? The small beast ignored the two and looked up at the sky. Pretend to be silent in front of Grandpa Frog. Grandpa Frog will never be polite to those who don't keep their promises. Why are you so arrogant? If it weren't for the people behind you, would you have the strength and status you have today? The ethereal voice finally sounded again. Not convinced. Fine. Grandpa Frog will go to the divine kingdom now and destroy you, the golden small beast said domineeringly. How dare you? The ethereal voice shouted angrily. You actually doubt Grandpa Frog's courage? Interesting. You are the first. Don't worry. Wait for me to destroy them, then I will destroy you. The golden small beast's gaze turned and fell on the king and the other two. Small Beast had yet to make a move, but the monarch and the other two could already feel chills running down their spines just by looking at the small beast's eyes. Stop! The misty voice sounded a little anxious. What is it? Not arrogant anymore. I thought you didn't care about these people. The golden small beast sneered and said, Since you breached the agreement first, shouldn't you take out dozens of inheritances of ultimate profundities as compensation to the sky cloud realm? Ugh! Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. Inheritances of dozens of ultimate laws and ultimate mysteries? This little beast was too daring to ask for it, not to mention inheritances of ultimate profundities of supreme laws. They didn't even dare to think about inheritances of dozens of ordinary ultimate profundities of laws. The monarch and the others were also dumbfounded. Wasn't this equivalent to daylight robbery? Heaven-devouring beast. How can you be so overbearing? Do you think I don't know what you and Ice Dragon are like? You keep saying that we breached the agreement. Haven't you broken your promises before? Aren't you just looking for a reason to openly protect the Sky Cloud realm? Just say it. Why do you have to be so pretentious? The misty voice sounded angry and seemed to be very angry. When the golden small beast and ice dragon heard this, their faces suddenly darkened. They were a little angry and shouted, "Stop talking nonsense. Quickly take out dozens of inheritances and get your people out of here." Want to take advantage of the situation? Not a chance. If you really want the inheritances, sure. As long as someone from the Sky Cloud realm can defeat any one of the 3 monarchs, I will give the Sky Cloud realm inheritances of 10 ultimate profundities of supreme laws for free. And I solemnly promise that I will not personally intervene in the war between the Divine Kingdom and the Sky Cloud realm for 10,000 years. The misty voice said. When the small beast and ice dragon heard this, they couldn't help but turn to look at Qin Feiyang and the others. Defeat one of the 3 monarchs? This task seemed a little too difficult for these little guys. But these little guys were currently the strongest people in the Sky Cloud realm. If even they had no hope, then others would have no hope. At this time, Qin Feiyang said, "If we can really defeat one of them, then I have to add another condition." Everyone immediately looked at Qin Feiyang. They really want to accept the challenge? Don't joke around. They would rather not have any compensation than fight with the 3 monarchs. You have guts, say it. The misty voice said. Qin Feiyang said, "It's still the original condition. The older generation can't fight and can't kill the innocent in the Sky Cloud realm." Impossible. The misty voice directly refused. How can we give the Sky Cloud realm time to grow? This was originally my agreement with the monarchs. Now that you have breached the agreement, I will ask again. Why don't you agree? Qin Feiyang said angrily. Boom! The heavenly tribulation came again. Really annoying. The golden small beast raised its eyebrows and rushed into the sky, directly swallowing the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky in one breath. Looking at this scene, the shock in the hearts of Qin Feiyang and others was simply indescribable. How heaven-defying is this small beast? With the disappearance of the tribulation clouds, Madman officially mastered the ultimate meaning of the law of death. Qin Feiyang also officially mastered the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. In other words, they have successfully passed the tribulation. It was originally a heavenly tribulation with a slim chance of survival, but it ended just like that. Everyone felt like they were in a dream, really domineering. If you find it annoying, just swallow it in one bite. Long Qin couldn't help but smile bitterly. The corners of Li Feng, Yun Ziang, and the others' mouths twitched. This was not an ordinary heavenly tribulation, but a heavenly tribulation of the law of death and the law of life and death. Even Qin Feiyang, who controlled 3,000 incarnations and the eye of heaven, had to go all out. But this small beast swallowed it in one bite. It felt like its stomach could hold the entire world. If they also had such means, why would they be afraid of the divine kingdom? In the eyes of Qin Feiyang and others, this was a heaven-defying method, but for the golden small beast, it seemed to have done something very easy. The small beast landed next to the ice dragon and said lightly, Qin Feiyang's condition is indeed not excessive, but what are you thinking in your heart? Uncle Frog also knows that you don't want to give them any more time to grow. I don't deny it, the ethereal voice said. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang was about to speak, but at this moment, golden clouds suddenly appeared in the clear sky. He immediately raised his head to look. Madman and others were also the same, their eyes full of surprise. Soon, the clouds covered the entire sky. A terrifying aura gradually recovered. This is Qin Feiyang and others were shocked. If it was in the past, they definitely wouldn't know what this was, but after seeing the fusion of the king and the divine king's will of the heavens, they could immediately tell that this aura was the will of the heavens. Why would the will of the heavens appear? Whether it was Qin Feiyang or Madman, they didn't seem to have grasped the 6 ultimate laws. So, suddenly, the will of the heavens descended from the sky, its aura locking onto Qin Feiyang. Old Qin, when did you master the ultimate profundities of the 6 supreme laws? Madman looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. I didn't. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The ultimate laws he grasped now were the cause and effect law, the death law, the life law, and the life and death law. He was still 2 laws away from the 6 ultimate laws. Ignorant. This is the good fortune of comprehending the life and death law. The golden small beast glanced at the group of people, its eyes full of disdain. What? Comprehending the life and death law will cause the will of the heavens to descend. Everyone was surprised. Otherwise, how can it be the strongest law in the world? The golden small beast said indifferently. When everyone heard this, they stared at Qin Feiyang with envy. Other people needed to grasp the 6 ultimate laws before the will of the heavens would descend, but this guy already had the will of the heavens. Wasn't this strength equivalent to a huge increase? Qin Feiyang was stunned for a moment, but when he regained his senses, he was also very excited. He never thought that comprehending the life and death law's ultimate law would have such benefits. The life and death law's ultimate law itself could crush the ultimate laws. Coupled with the will of the heavens, wouldn't it be even more powerful? Some people were happy, while others were worried. The king, the divine king, and the human race's sovereign were all worried at this moment. Not only did he successfully grasp the life and death law's ultimate law, but he also integrated with the will of the heavens. In a sense, this kid had completely grown up. Even if it was them facing this kid now, they would be in a tough battle, because their biggest advantage was the will of the heavens. But now, Qin Feiyang also had the will of the heavens, so their advantage was gone. Moreover, Qin Feiyang still had 3,000 incarnations and the Eye of Heaven. If it was a one-on-one battle, they might even be no match for Qin Feiyang. Behind the 3 of them, Ryuko and Jiang Yinshuang were even more furious. Especially Ryuko. He was about to go crazy. There was originally a gap between him and Qin Feiyang, and this gap was the Eye of Heaven. But now, not only did the other party successfully grasp the life and death law's ultimate law, but he also had the will of the heavens. The gap between them was 108,000 miles. He was also full of hatred for Ice Dragon and Small Beast. Because if it weren't for the sudden appearance of Ice Dragon and Small Beast, not only Qin Feiyang, but everyone here would have died. How could he have successfully transcended the tribulation and integrated with the will of the heavens? However, he didn't think about it. Their divine kingdom was an invader to begin with, and it was also their divine kingdom that had violated their oath. If it weren't for the king and the others, who could stop Qin Feiyang and Madman from transcending the tribulation, him, Ryuko, or Jiang Yinshuang, he didn't have the strength at all. Moreover, the king and the others came to bully the weak and didn't say a word. When Ice Dragon and Small Beast came out to help, resentment immediately rose in their hearts. This kind of character, wasn't it a typical example of only allowing the officials to set fires, but not allowing the common people to light lamps? How is it? Do you have the confidence to defeat them now? The golden small beast asked without turning its head. We'll know after we fight. Qin Feiyang looked at the king and the others, and a fighting spirit rose from his body. The will of the heavens fell and merged into his body. In a trance, he seemed to have transformed into the heavens, standing in the clouds and looking down on all living beings, as if he could destroy a piece of heaven and earth with a flick of his finger. Moreover, after the will of the heavens fused with him, his essence, energy, and spirit were all sublimated, as if he had been reborn. The most obvious change was that some of the profound laws that he couldn't understand before now seemed to be able to understand with a little thought. Not only could it increase his strength, but it also increased his comprehension and potential. Was this the benefit of fusing with the will of the heavens? If you can't even beat them, what can you use to defeat me? Don't forget, we also have a 10,000-year agreement. If you are defeated by Uncle Frog, then the ancient realm, Great Chin, Forgotten Continent, and even your Black Tortoise realm will all be buried with you. This is the bet you made back then. The golden small beast smiled coldly. When Chin Feiyong heard this, it was as if he was struck by lightning. The joy of fusing with the will of the heavens also disappeared in an instant. Staring at the back of the golden small beast, he clenched his fists and said firmly, "This battle, I will definitely win." "Haha," the golden small beast laughed and said, "Then Uncle Frog will wait and see." Chapter 4018. The madman and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other, then looked at Chin Feiyong and the golden small beast, their brows tightly knitted together. The small beast was obviously deliberately provoking Chin Feiyong. Logically speaking, with Chin Feiyong's calm mind, he shouldn't be provoked by the small beast. Others might not understand, but they knew that defeating the small beast had always been Chin Feiyong's long-cherished wish. What kind of hatred do they have? Even gambling with the lives of several continents? This matter, even Long Qin didn't know, not to mention people like Yun Ziang and Li Zhongxing. A great hatred. The madman transmitted his voice. At this time, Chin Feiyong took a step forward and landed in front of the king and the other two. "You really dare to come out and challenge?" Ryuko's face was full of ridicule. It was as if he was mocking Chin Feiyong for overestimating himself. Chin Feiyong glanced at Ryuko, and the power of death rolled out. The 18 layers of hell instantly appeared, and the will of the heavenly Tao erupted, carrying the power of destruction as it suppressed Ryuko. As expected, once you master the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, you will master the ultimate meaning of the law of death and the law of life at the same time. In other words, little Chinzi now, in addition to the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, he has also mastered the ultimate meaning of the 3 strongest laws. The white-eyed wolf whispered, "Don't forget, he also has the ultimate meaning of the law of light. In total, he has now mastered 5 ultimate meanings." "Damn it, more than me." The madman was indignant. "More than you? Are you kidding me? Now you have also mastered 5 ultimate meanings." Li Feng was speechless. The madman was slightly taken aback, then patted his head and nodded. "Yes, just now I have already comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of death. The law of death, law of destruction, law of space, law of slaughter, law of thunder. These were the ultimate meanings that the madman had mastered. On the other side, seeing Chin Feiyong directly attacking without saying anything, Ryuko's expression changed on the spot. He hurriedly activated his 3,000 incarnations, and 6,000 ultimate meanings appeared, turning into a torrent of beasts that blasted towards the 18 layers of hell. Boom! Accompanied by a heaven-shaking explosion, the 18 layers of hell were shattered. Hell, although the heavens will of death, he still hadn't activated his 3,000 incarnations. At this moment, he had only 1 death, and didn't even activate his 3,000 incarnations. A single ultimate profundity of the law of death would naturally not be able to block 6,000 ultimate profundities. Thus, Chin Feiyong was not surprised at all. He didn't activate the 3,000's will. CLE-eyed Emperor didn't use had. S will of God didn't use him. Will Z was now what had was. Will with a thought, 1,000 clones appeared. Bang! S is God will Z. That was. There were only 1 S. However, every ultimate profundity contained the will of the heavenly Tao. Chin Feiyong just wanted to see how strong an ultimate profundity that possessed the will of the heavenly Tao was. 1,000 against 6,000. The difference between them was a full 6 times. Anyone who saw this scene would think that Qin Feiyang was like an ant trying to shake a tree, because the difference of 6 times was too big. But at this moment, everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation, because all of them wanted to know exactly what the difference was between an ultimate profundity without the will of the heavenly Tao and an ultimate profundity with the will of the heavenly Tao. In the blink of an eye, the two ultimates turned into torrents, exuding overwhelming power as they blasted towards each other. Boom! Accompanied by a loud explosion, the two torrents finally met in the void. A wave of destructive energy swept out in all directions like a tide. In the next moment, the two ultimates began to shatter. In less than 10 breaths, Qin Feiyang's 1,000 ultimates and Ryuko's 6,000 ultimates all collapsed and dissipated in the void. They were evenly matched. This scene shocked Madman and the others who were watching the battle, as well as Qin Feiyang, who was on the battlefield. 1,000 against 6,000, they were actually evenly matched. In other words, the will of death increased the power of the ultimate S by 6 times. Wasn't this kind of improvement a little too terrifying? One ultimate S with the will of death was enough to compete with 6 ultimates without the will of death. It was really unbelievable. Everyone's desire for the will of death instantly rose to the extreme. I can definitely do it. White-eyed Wolf clenched his fists. He had this potential more than anyone else. This was because he himself had grasped 6 supreme laws of nature, and now he had also mastered 4 ultimate, with only the life and destruction laws left. As long as he comprehended the ultimate S with the life and destruction laws, or fused the inheritance of 2 ultimate, he would successfully possess the will of death. At that time, his strength would instantly increase by a large margin. Will of death! Ryuko stared at Qin Feiyang, his expression extremely ferocious. 1,000 ultimate, with 6,000 ultimate. What kind of joke was this? I don't accept this. Along with a hysterical roar, his entire body radiated dazzling, purple-gold divine light. Roar! The next moment, with a heaven-shaking dragon roar, a purple-gold, divine, dragon tens of thousands of feet long appeared. It was Ryuko's true body. Each dragon scale seemed to be forged from divine jade. Dragon might spread out, shaking the world. Boom! Not only him, but even the 3,000 clones behind him had turned into purple-gold divine dragons. Their terrifying auras caused the madman and the others to feel a chill in their hearts. The moment they returned to their true bodies, the 3,000 clones, including Ryuko, all activated their ultimate, at the same time and madly charged at Qin Feiyang, their eyes filled with jealousy and hatred. A human was actually more outstanding than him. Although Qin Feiyang also had purple-gold dragon blood, could it compare to him? He was a true purple-gold, divine dragon. No matter what, he could not lose to this human. An ant should have the awareness of an ant. Qin Feiyang's eyes were very calm. In the past, Ryuko might have been able to threaten him, but now he had comprehended the ultimate of the law of life and death and merged with the will of death. It was no exaggeration to say that he was not even qualified to be his opponent. The ultimate of the law of death and the law of karma were activated at the same time. Previously, he had not lost even when facing 6 paths with 1,000, let alone now. 2,000 ultimate S of the law of life and deaths of the law of life and death crushed the void and the earth with an unstoppable momentum. Seeing the scene, Ryuko felt despair. Too strong. Just this of the law of life and death was enough to make him unable to fight back. One had to know. His opponent had not even activated the Eye of Heaven and the law of life and death. But now, he did not even have the ability to make Qin Feiyang activate the Eye of Heaven. Thinking back to the past, although he could not defeat Qin Feiyang, at least Qin Feiyang had to go all out when facing him. But now he was afraid that even if he used all his skills, he would not be able to make Qin Feiyang activate the Eye of Heaven. The gap was not small anymore. Seeing that Ryuko's blood was about to splatter in the sky, seeing that Ryuko's confidence and fighting spirit was being destroyed by Qin Feiyang, the king's eyes darkened as he stepped in front of Ryuko. "Grandfather!" Ryuko looked at the king's back with gloomy eyes. "Don't be discouraged. The purple gold divine dragon race has always had the spirit of not admitting defeat. We cannot lose confidence because of one failure. If you can't even withstand this setback, what right do you have to call yourself a purple gold divine dragon? What right do you have to be my grandson?" As his voice fell, a monstrous divine aura erupted. 3,000 clones appeared in the void behind him, and Ultimate Intense instantly occupied half the sky. There were a total of 18,000 Ultimate Intense. Boom! With a wave of the king's hand, 18,000 Ultimate Intense shot out. This was definitely a situation of suppression, because not only did the number far exceed Qin Feiyang's, but these 18,000 Ultimate Intense also contained the will of the Heavenly Tao. There was no suspense. Qin Feiyang's 2,000 Ultimate Intense were easily crushed. However, after crushing Qin Feiyang's Ultimate Intense, the king did not continue to kill Qin Feiyang, and the 18,000 Ultimate Intense stopped in the void. "Speak! Who do you want to challenge?" The king looked at Qin Feiyang, and the more he looked, the more satisfied he was, but at the same time the more apprehensive he was. If this person was from their divine nation, it would be a great thing for him as the monarch of the divine nation. However, this child was born in the Sky Cloud realm, and no matter what, he was not willing to follow him to the divine kingdom. From the perspective of an opponent and enemy, this child's means and potential were definitely enough to threaten the divine kingdom. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang looked at the king, then at the divine king and the human race's supremacy. "Supremacy, are you confident in defeating him?" the divine king asked telepathically. The human race's supremacy's eyes flickered as he analyzed in his mind. In the end, he sighed and said, if he doesn't have the 3,000 clones and the Eye of Heaven, he might have a chance of winning. Might? The divine king was surprised. Yes, might. Even if he doesn't have the Eye of Heaven and the 3,000 clones, he still has the ultimate intents of the law of life and death and the will of the heavenly Tao. The ultimate intents of the law of life and death are much stronger than the ultimate intents of the law of life and death. Coupled with his will of the heavenly Tao, I'm afraid that even if you activate the God Race mark and the will of the heavenly Tao, you won't be able to block the ultimate intents of the law of life and death. The human race's supremacy side. Yes, as long as this child comprehends the ultimate intents of the law of life and death, he will have completely grown up. I'm afraid that apart from the king, no one in the divine kingdom can stop him. The divine king's expression was extremely complicated, but at the same time, he was also extremely angry. If it wasn't for the fact that the king cared about the divine dragon sword and made an agreement with Qin Feiyang, how could there be such a situation? What was even more infuriating was that, in the end, in order to rescue Ryuko and the others, they made a 10,000-year agreement and even made a blood oath. Wasn't this equivalent to giving Qin Feiyang time to grow? I know what you're thinking, but things have already come to this point. It's useless to blame anyone. Besides, the king must be regretting it now. Besides, how smart is the king? How could he not think of this? He must think that even if Qin Feiyang is given another 1,000 years or even 10,000 years, he won't be able to comprehend the ultimate intents of the law of life and death. It's not just the king. Didn't we think the same back then? But who would have thought that in just a few decades he would be able to comprehend the ultimate intents of the law of life and death, instantly reaching the heavens in a single step? So, if we want to talk about the responsibility, it's not all on the king. The two of us are also responsible because we underestimated this child's comprehension ability and potential. the human race's supremacy side. Chapter 4019. The white-eyed wolf's eyes flickered as he transmitted his voice. Little Qin Zi, challenging the sovereign of the human race, or the divine king. That's right. Although they are strong, they don't have 3,000 incarnations and are easier to deal with than the monarch. The madman also said, excitedly, as long as Qin Feiyang won this battle, he would be able to obtain the inheritance of the 10 ultimate laws. For the Sky Cloud Realm, this was something they didn't even dare to think about. But now, the opportunity was right in front of their eyes. And as long as they won this battle, the sovereign of the divine kingdom wouldn't intervene in the battle between them and the monarch for 10,000 years. They definitely wouldn't dare to easily believe the promise of the divine kingdom. But now it was different. Now there was Ice Dragon and Small Beast personally overseeing. If the divine kingdom dared to break the promise again, they would inevitably face the wrath of Ice Dragon and Small Beast. In other words, Ice Dragon and Small Beast were witnesses now. If you break the promise, you won't give them face. With the character of these two bastards, not giving them face was simply courting death. Therefore, there couldn't be any accidents in this battle. Not only was it related to Qin Feiyang's dignity, but it was also related to the fate of the Sky Cloud Realm in the future. Since they couldn't lose, they naturally had to choose the weaker ones. Qin Feiyang was silent for a moment, then suddenly looked at the sky and said, I still want to adhere to the previous conditions. As long as I win this battle, the older generation of the divine kingdom can't make a move. Absolutely impossible. An ethereal voice sounded. If Qin Feiyang could even defeat the 3 monarchs, then in the future, in a one-on-one situation, in the entire divine kingdom, except for him, the sovereign, who else could be Qin Feiyang's opponent? At that time, if the older generation of the divine kingdom were restricted from making a move, then wouldn't Qin Feiyang be able to do whatever he wanted in the divine kingdom? Because the younger generation of the divine kingdom couldn't stop him now. They could only rely on the older generation. Moreover, even the older generation couldn't fight Qin Feiyang one-on-one. In a one-on-one fight, he would definitely lose. Qin Feiyang looked a little annoyed as he said in a deep voice, If that's the case, we'll have to add another 5 ultimate intents. 5 more. Everyone looked at each other in anticipation and nervousness. Don't be unsatisfied. 10 ultimate profound legacies is already my limit. The misty voice said angrily, Everything was caused by the divine kingdom. I don't think it's too much to ask for the inheritance of 15 ultimate mysteries. Qin Feiyang didn't want to be outdone, so he fought back. Not too much? Opposite. The divine king raised his eyebrows and looked at Qin Feiyang. Do you know the value of an inheritance? Then, do you know how much damage your divine kingdom has brought to our Sky Cloud realm? Qin Feiyang looked at the divine king, anger rising in his eyes. The divine king said angrily, In these years of confrontation, it seems that your Sky Cloud realm has always had the upper hand. What damage can there be? Aren't your words a bit unreasonable? You invaded the Sky Cloud realm, aren't you harming us? Now you came to kill us, aren't you harming us? If it wasn't for the Feather Emperor and the others who moved the creatures of the Western continent in advance, what do you think the Western continent would be like now? Let me tell you, the people will be in a terrible situation, and blood will flow like a river. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. After causing so much damage to the Sky Cloud realm, they still put on an aggrieved look. How could their skin be so thick? The divine king frowned. Okay, let's not talk about this time. Let's talk about the last time. The last time you came to the Sky Cloud realm, the entire continent fell apart, and countless creatures died tragically, and the Nether King's hell. All the creatures of the Nether King's hell died in the hands of Ji Yun Hai and the others. Isn't this harming us? The monstrous sins you bear will never be washed away. Qin Feiyang shouted, his hair standing on end. After hearing his words, the Divine King was speechless. Although the god race didn't participate in the battle last time, it was undeniable that the god race was also a member of the Divine Kingdom. The god race naturally couldn't escape the responsibility of the sins committed by the Divine Kingdom. If there isn't an inheritance of 15 ultimate laws, I refuse to challenge you. Let Ice Dragon and the others kill their way to the Divine Kingdom and let you experience the taste of despair. Qin Feiyang said each word with a pause, his eyes filled with strong killing intent. This kid, he actually used us to scare them. The golden, small beast grumbled. Who asked us to stand here now? Ice Dragon shook his head. Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, the king and the others couldn't help but look at Ice Dragon and the small beast, their eyes full of wariness. The ruler of the Divine Kingdom also fell silent. After a long time, the ethereal voice finally sounded. All right, as you wish. I'll give you the inheritance of 15 ultimate laws of nature. However, if you lose, you'll be my slave for the rest of your life. You are not worthy. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and looked at the king. I challenge you. What? The madman and the white-eyed wolf's expressions froze. Didn't he challenge the Divine King and the human sovereign? Why did he impulsively challenge the king? This person could become the king of the Divine Kingdom, so his strength must be above the human sovereign and the Divine King. How foolish! There was a ready-made soft persimmon, but he had to pick a bone that was difficult to chew. The Feather Emperor, the Blood Ancestor, and the little rabbit had also come to the side of the madman and the others. Seeing Qin Feiyang's decision, they couldn't help but feel a little angry. They knew the reason why Qin Feiyang challenged the king. Because the king was the highest authority of the purple-gold Divine Dragon Clan. First, he challenged the king for the princess of the Divine Kingdom. Second, he wanted to prove to the king that a human possessing the purple-gold Divine Dragon's blood might not be a disgrace to the purple-gold Divine Dragon Clan. It could also be a pride. But now, was it the time to be impulsive? The inheritance of 15 ultimate laws and the ruler behind the king and the others were the key. However, they also knew what Qin Feiyang had decided would not change because of anyone. Now, they could only pray that Qin Feiyang could win this battle. The king was also surprised by Qin Feiyang's challenge. At first, he also thought that Qin Feiyang might challenge the Divine King or the human sovereign. However, he didn't expect that without saying a word, he would directly target him. Challenging him was tantamount to challenging the entire purple-gold Divine Dragon Clan, or even the entire Divine Kingdom, because as the king, he represented the Divine Kingdom. If he lost to him, it wouldn't be shameful. After all, he was the strongest person in the Divine Kingdom. But if he could defeat him, not only could he obtain 15 inheritances, but he could also raise the fighting spirit of the Sky Cloud realm. At the same time, he could suppress the morale of the Divine Kingdom. It could be said to be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. However, did he really think he could defeat him? In a one-on-one battle, the Eye of Heaven could be ignored, because the Eye of Heaven needed a long time to copy the ultimate laws. He was confident and also had the ability to forcefully interrupt Qin Feiyang before he could copy it. So, the only thing that could threaten him was the ultimate laws of life and death. He didn't know how strong the ultimate laws of life and death were. However, on the whole, the ultimate profundities that he had grasped far surpassed Qin Feiyang's. This was his capital. Since you chose me, then go all out. The king said. Before he could finish his words, the 18,000 ultimate meanings floating in the void instantly erupted with a monstrous divine might. They shattered the vast sky and charged towards Qin Feiyang. Of course, I will go all out. Qin Feiyang's eyes turned cold, and his 3,000 incarnations instantly activated. Life with a thought, death with a thought, heaven with a thought, hell with a thought, kingdom of life and death descend. The 3,000 incarnations looked pious, as if they were praying to the heavens. Their loud voices shook all directions. As their voices fell, streaks of shocking might surged out from the sky. At this moment, everyone looked up at the sky. Kingdom of life and death. This should be the ultimate law of life and death. How heaven-defying was it? They were really looking forward to it. The originally clear sky surged with the power of life and death. Black and white alternated, emitting an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. Boom! The next moment, 3,000 kingdoms appeared. Each of these kingdoms was like an independent world, boundless. One side was heaven and the other was hell. And in the center of each kingdom, everyone could see a figure. This figure was exactly the same as Qin Feiyang. It was as if he was the heavenly Tao of these kingdoms, looking down on the world. 3,000 incarnations, 3,000 kingdoms. Everyone looked at these 3,000 kingdoms and felt a sense of insignificance. It was as if they were facing 3,000 worlds, and even their divine souls were trembling. At this moment, the monarch's 18,000 strands of ultimates were about to reach Qin Feiyang. Suppress! Qin Feiyang took a step back and raised his hand. The 3,000 kingdoms of life and death instantly carried an aura as mighty as the heavenly might, shattering the sky and pressing down on the 18,000 ultimate Upanishads. Boom! A series of loud noises immediately sounded, deafening everyone's ears. This part of heaven and earth instantly turned into chaos. Terrifying waves of air surged out in all directions like an avalanche. With Small Beast and Ice Dragon around, Frenzy and the others naturally didn't have to worry about being affected by the battle. At this moment, they stood in the wind and watched the 3,000 kingdoms collide with the 18,000 ultimate laws. Their faces were full of shock. Each kingdom of life and death could shatter an ultimate profound. However, Frenzy and White-Eyed Wolf couldn't help but frown at this result. Wasn't it said that the ultimate laws of life and death could crush the ultimate laws of the strongest laws? But why was there a situation where they were evenly matched? Didn't you guys notice that Qin Feiyang hasn't activated the will of the heavenly Tao? Long Qin looked at the two of them. He hasn't activated the will of the heavenly Tao. Frenzy and the others focused their eyes. As expected, the 3,000 kingdoms didn't contain the will of the heavenly Tao. In other words, the 3,000 kingdoms only had their own power. The power of the kingdoms could compete with the ultimate laws of the strongest laws that had fused with the will of the heavenly Tao. One had to know whether or not they had fused with the will of the heavenly Tao was a completely different concept. Qin Feiyang had personally tested it before. An ultimate law with the will of the heavenly Tao was 6 times more lethal than one without the will of the heavenly Tao. In other words, each of the monarch's 18,000 ultimate profundities were 6 times more powerful than ordinary ultimate profundities. 6 times was equivalent to 6 low-level sovereign divine weapons. Chapter 4020. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's kingdom of life and death didn't contain the will of the heavenly Tao. Without the will of the heavenly Tao, it could compete with the king's ultimate meaning. In other words, without the will of the heavenly Tao, the kingdom of life and death could compete with 6 sovereign weapons. Wasn't this heaven-defying enough? In the past, everyone said that the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death could crush the ultimate meaning of the strongest law, but no one expected it to be to this extent. This kind of gap was separated by the will of the heavenly Tao, because the will of the heavenly Tao could also increase one's combat power by 6 times. If, at this time, the king's ultimate meaning didn't integrate with the will of the heavenly Tao, wouldn't these 3,000 ultimate meaning of the law of life and death be able to compete with the king's 18,000 ultimate meaning? Because without the will of the heavenly Tao, one ultimate meaning of the law of life and death could compete with 6 ultimate meaning. 3,000 multiplied by 6, wouldn't that be 18,000? Strong. The frenzy and the white-eyed wolf's eyes trembled. The ultimate meaning of the law of life and death was so strong without the will of the heavenly Tao. If Qin Feiyang activated the will of the heavenly Tao, the power of the kingdom of life and death would increase by 6 times. How terrifying would that be? Even if it was the monarch's 18,000 ultimate meanings, it would still be a one-sided battle. This was the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death? It was hard to imagine. In this battle, Qin Feiyang would win. Dozens of breaths passed. The 3,000 kingdom of life and death finally collapsed. 3,000 of the monarch's 18,000 ultimates had crumbled. Although the king had the upper hand in the first round, he couldn't be happy at all, because he had already discovered that Qin Feiyang didn't activate the will of the heavenly Tao. He must end the battle quickly. With a wave of his hand, the remaining 15,000 ultimate meaning rushed towards Qin Feiyang like a tide. The ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. Finally, my efforts were not in vain. A smile crept onto Qin Feiyang's face. In order to comprehend the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, how many difficulties had he experienced over the years, especially before? In order to protect him, everyone almost died in battle. Now, the bitterness was finally over. The lethality was comparable to 6 sovereign weapons. Who could imagine? It was no wonder that the life and death laws were so difficult to comprehend, and the heavenly tribulation was so terrifying. There was a reason for this. It was because the laws of life and death were too powerful. If he wanted to possess such a powerful technique, he would have to endure it. If you can't, you'll lose everything, even your life. If he could endure it, he would reach the heavens in a single bound. After testing the might of the life and death law's ultimate profundity, Qin Feiyang's confidence soared, and he no longer held back. If he was still unable to defeat the monarch even with such powerful means, he might as well just bang his head against a wall. Boom! Accompanied by a terrifying aura, the 3,000 kingdoms of life and death once again descended from the sky. Will of the heavenly Tao open! Qin Feiyang's eyes were like torches. As the will of the heavenly Tao was activated, the 3,000 kingdoms of life and death instantly erupted with an even more terrifying aura. At this moment, not only this region, but the entire Western continent began to tremble. The giant mountains continued to crumble. The ground caved in madly. Abyssal rifts spread across the entire continent like giant pythons. At this moment, if one were to look down from the sky, they would definitely see an earth-shattering scene. The entire Western continent was being destroyed. The rifts were so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. It was as if a layer of spider web had been laid out. This was a disaster. It was doomsday. But fortunately, all the living beings in the Western continent had already retreated. Otherwise, this instant would be enough to turn the Western continent into a sea of corpses and blood. On the battlefield, the white-eyed wolf and the others were extremely excited. With such a powerful kingdoms of life and death and the will of the heavenly Tao, wouldn't they be able to kill even gods? But on the other side, Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang, who were standing behind the human race's supremacy and the divine king, were horrified. Not only them, but even the human race's supremacy and the divine king couldn't help but turn pale at this moment. The power of the life and death law's ultimate profundity was far beyond their imagination. Originally, they still had a trace of luck in their hearts. With their strength, they might be able to defeat Qin Feiyang. But now, after witnessing the terror of the life and death law's ultimate profundity with their own eyes, the bit of luck in their hearts instantly disappeared. Facing this kid, they would definitely lose. In an instant, the 3,000 kingdoms of life and death met with the 15,000 ultimate profundities. The kingdoms of life and death that had merged with the will of the heavenly Tao was simply like a god descending to the mortal world. Unstoppable. One kingdoms of life and death was enough to compete with 6 ultimate profundities. The king's ultimate profundities were shattered wave after wave. So powerful, the monarch himself was also dumbfounded by what he saw. The lethality displayed by this kingdoms of life and death was even more terrifying than the legends. But now, even he suddenly lost his confidence. One kingdoms of life and death that contained the will of the heavenly Tao could compete with his 6 ultimate profundities. Wouldn't 3,000 kingdoms of life and death be able to compete with 18,000 ultimate profundities? In other words, now, Qin Feiyang could compete with him just by relying on the ultimate profundities of the life and death law and the will of the heavenly Tao. Moreover, in addition to the ultimate profundities of the life and death law, Qin Feiyang also had several other ultimate profundities: karma law, death law, life law, and light law. These 4 ultimate profundities had yet to be activated. If all of them were activated, how ridiculous would it be? Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, all 15,000 ultimate profundities were shattered. However, Qin Feiyang still had 500 kingdoms of life and death left. The outcome has been decided. There's no need to activate the Eye of Heaven. Qin Feiyang's eyes shone brightly. The remaining 500 kingdoms of life and death immediately attacked the king. The outcome has been decided. If I only have this bit of strength, am I still worthy to be the king of the divine kingdom? The king snorted coldly. The 3,000 avatars behind him once again activated an ultimate profundity. What? This is the karma law's ultimate profundity. Frenzy, and the others were shocked. Previously, the king activated the 6 ultimate profundities of the time law: time array, devour law, death law, nothingness law, and destruction law. But now he activated the karma law's ultimate profundity. In other words, he had mastered a total of 7 ultimate profundities of the time law, not to mention 7 ultimate profundities of the time law. To be able to comprehend 7 ordinary ultimate profundities of the time law was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. That was too strong. Out of the 8 ultimate profundities of the time law, the king had mastered 7. Only the life law had yet to be mastered. After reaching the sovereign realm, there was no limit to the number of profundities one could comprehend. For example, Qin Feiyang had already comprehended 7 profundities of the time law when he was in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance: light law, force law, wind law, force law, slaughter law, thunder law, karma law, and later he even obtained the destruction law in the Een Devil Land. That was equivalent to 8 ultimate profundities of the time law. As long as he continued to comprehend and had the ability, he would be able to comprehend the ultimate profundities of these profundities of the time law. Now, it was naturally even more terrifying, because he had comprehended the life law, death law, and life and death law. In other words, the current Qin Feiyang alone had mastered 11 types of profundities of the time law. When he finally comprehended the ultimate profundities, what kind of scene would that be? He would probably scare the others to death. Boom! The 3,000 ultimate profundities of the time law, after activating the will of the heavenly Tao, immediately rushed towards the 500 life and death kingdoms. Another series of earth-shattering noises. In the end, the ultimate profundities of both sides were destroyed in the void. 7 ultimate profundities of the time law. Powerful indeed! Qin Feiyang looked at the king in admiration. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. It was the purple gold dragon blood. You're not bad either. If it were the divine king and the human race supreme, you would have one by now. The king was full of praise for Qin Feiyang. Similarly, purple gold dragon blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. When the divine king and the human race supreme heard this, they immediately looked at the king in dissatisfaction. wasn't it just relying on the 3,000 incarnations? Without the 3,000 incarnations, it was still unknown who would win and who would lose. Qin Feiyang glanced at the Divine King and the human race supreme, then looked at the king and said, "Then please answer me now. Is the purple gold dragon blood still a disgrace on a human?" The king was stunned and frowned. "This is the reason why you challenged me?" "That's right. I just want to prove that although we both have the purple gold dragon blood, I am stronger than the descendants of the purple gold divine dragon clan. I also want the ancestor to see that she was right to choose the human emperor in this life. Not only me, Qin Feiyang, but the descendants of the Qin clan will also be more outstanding than the descendants of the purple gold divine dragon clan." Qin Feiyang stepped out. The Karma Divine Lotus, the 18 levels of hell, and the kingdom of life and death roared out in unison. The 3,000 incarnations behind him also activated the 3 ultimate profundities in an instant. The 3,000 kingdom of life and death combined with the will of the heavenly way was enough to contend with 18,000 ultimate profundities. The 3,000 Karma Divine Lotus and the 18 levels of hell could also contend with the 6,000 ultimate profundities of the king. In total, it was 24,000 profundities. In other words, although he couldn't compare to the king in terms of quantity, he had surpassed the king in terms of quality. Because even if the king had mastered the 7 ultimate profundities, after the 3,000 incarnations activated, there would only be 21,000 profundities. There was a difference of 3,000 profundities. Did he still need to activate the Eye of Heaven? Not at all. Watch carefully. The Qin clan will definitely surpass the purple gold divine dragon clan in the future. Qin Feiyang roared. 903 ultimate profundities instantly turned into a raging wave and surged toward the king. "I look forward to your surpassing." The king took a step forward and activated the 7 ultimate profundities. Behind him, the 21,000 ultimate profundities of the 3,000 incarnations also appeared instantly. Immediately, 21,007 ultimate profound surged out in a mighty manner. Seeing this, Ice Dragon waved his hand. An invisible force surged and turned into a shield wall in front of him. The white-eyed wolf and the others ran behind Ice Dragon and Small Beast. The collision between the two was equivalent to the collision of tens of thousands of sovereign divine weapons. No, there would be more, because their ultimate profundities were supported by the will of the heavenly Tao. If one really calculated, it might be the sum of hundreds of thousands of sovereign divine weapons. This kind of fluctuation wasn't something they could withstand. Boom! With an earth-shattering explosion, the 2 ultimate profundities finally collided. At the same time, an invisible will descended and protected the 4 supreme beings of the human race as well. But the Western continent wasn't so lucky. More than half of the Western continent was turned into ashes in an instant. It turned into chaos, just like the beginning of heaven and earth. Even the heavenly cloud ocean, the eastern continent, the northern continent, the southern continent, and the various forbidden areas could feel the terrifying aura. All living beings in the heavenly cloud realm, at this moment, they were all looking in the direction of the western continent with shock and worry between their brows. Chapter 40:21. In the chaos, the wind howled. Terrifying fluctuations surged like a raging sea. In such an environment, even a sovereign weapon would shatter in an instant. Madman and the others stood behind Ice Dragon and Small Beast. Their hearts were in turmoil. On one hand, it was because of Qin Feiyang. Before comprehending the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, even the heavens' prides of the divine kingdom would have to struggle to defeat them. But now, after comprehending the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, his combat strength instantly soared to another level. No, not just one level. Now Qin Feiyang's combat strength could be said to be 10 times or even 100 times higher than before. Let's not talk about Madman and the White-Eyed Wolf. After all, he was brothers with Qin Feiyong. It was impossible to have a bloody battle with him. But Long Qin was confident that he could compete with Qin Feiyong, because his god's domain could not only restrain the 3,000 incarnations, but also the ultimate meaning. Once he entered the god's domain, the 3,000 incarnations and the ultimate meaning couldn't be activated. This was his confidence. But at this moment, looking at Qin Feiyong standing in front of him, he no longer had this confidence. However, he wasn't jealous. On the contrary, he was gratified, because Qin Feiyong was able to successfully master the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. Partly because of him. It was simple. If it wasn't for him, Madman, and the others desperately protecting Qin Feiyong, he would have died in the hands of Ryuko and the others. Chen, do you regret helping him now? Suddenly, Ice Dragon's voice sounded in Long Chen's mind. Why do you say that? Long Chen was stunned and looked at Ice Dragon puzzledly. Because you indirectly created a strong enemy in the future, Ice Dragon secretly said. Strong enemy? Long Chen shook his head and smiled. It's hard to say whether we'll be enemies in the future. Even if we do become enemies in the future, I won't regret what I did today because I didn't do it for them, but for the entire Sky Cloud realm. Hearing this, Ice Dragon's face was filled with gratification. He sighed. If your mother could be as open-minded as you, how could the dragons of the ancient world have fallen into such a state where everyone hates them and wants to kill them? Long Chen muttered to himself. Mother was wrong, but she is still your wife. Father knows. Otherwise, I wouldn't have saved her when the dragons were exterminated. Ice Dragon nodded. Suddenly, the father and son noticed that Long Qin, who was next to them, had been silent the whole time. His face was faintly pale, and there was even a trace of fear. Qin, what's wrong? Don't tell me you were scared silly by Qin Feiyong's strength. Long Qin was suspicious. In the face of such ridicule, Long Qin didn't get angry at all. How was this her character? If it were any other time, she would have rolled her eyes at Long Qin. But at this moment, she grabbed Long Chen's arm as if she was looking for a sense of security. She also looked at Ice Dragon from time to time with a panicked look. Girl, what are you doing? I don't think I provoked you. Ice Dragon was puzzled. Long Qin was still silent. Qin, what's wrong with you? Long Qin couldn't help but worry. Long Qin looked at Ice Dragon, summoned up her courage, and asked, What did you mean by that? What did I say? Ice Dragon was puzzled. You told me not to call you father. Long Qin whispered, tears almost flowing out. Did you say that? Hearing this, Long Qin immediately looked at Ice Dragon. Ice Dragon was also stunned and nodded. Yes, I did say that. Why is that? Long Qin was confused. Ice Dragon smiled bitterly and said, You silly girl, I told you not to call me father because I don't want the people of the Divine Kingdom to know about our relationship. Long Qin was stunned, and a trace of joy appeared in her eyes. She asked, Is that all? What else do you think? Ice Dragon was helpless. I thought you didn't recognize me as your daughter. Long Qin looked aggrieved. What are you thinking? How can I not recognize you? Whether it's you or your brother, you are my flesh and blood. I only feel sorry for you, because I have never been with you since you were young. Ice Dragon sighed secretly, and there was deep self-reproach on his face. Long Chen was sad, but soon calmed down and said, Are you worried that the Divine Kingdom will specifically target us after knowing about our relationship with you? Yes. I don't want you and your brother to become a bargaining chip for them to blackmail me. So you must keep this matter a secret, and also tell Qin Feiyong and the others not to reveal this to the Divine Kingdom. Ice Dragon said secretly. Okay. Long Qin nodded and asked secretly, Father, after the battle is over, can you stay for a while? I want to have a good chat with you. Ice Dragon looked deeply at Long Chen and nodded with a smile. Okay. During the conversation, the outcome of the battle had been decided. Not a single one of the monarch's 21,000 ultimate profound meanings remained. They were completely annihilated. But Qin Feiyang's side still had dozens of ultimates of the kingdom of life and death, and hundreds of ultimates of the law of karma and the law of death. Although there were only dozens of ultimates of the kingdom of life and death, their power was not inferior to the hundreds of ultimates of the law of karma and the law of death. Let's end this. As Qin Feiyang said these 3 words, the remaining ultimates immediately turned into a torrent and drowned the king. The purple gold dragon blood dyed the chaotic area. However, just when everyone thought the battle was over, a majestic life force emerged, followed by a huge purple gold dragon roaring out. This was the true body of the king. There was also a purple gold dragon mark between his eyebrows. He's full of energy again. Then, didn't little Qin Zi's efforts in the previous battle be in vain? The white-eyed wolf frowned. What kind of mark was it? It actually had such power. This was equivalent to having an extra life. It's not over yet. The king was more than 10,000 feet long, and the dragon scales all over his body were emitting a dazzling purple gold light. Behind him, his 3,000 incarnations also turned into purple gold dragons, and their dragon power shook the world. Boom! Accompanied by a shocking aura, the 21,000 ultimates once again appeared, tore through the chaos, and charged toward Qin Feiyang. Even though I still have a life, it's in vain. Qin Feiyang shook his head. 9,000 ultimates instantly appeared and charged toward the king like an army of thousands of men and horses. If they could defeat the king once, they could naturally defeat him a second time. But at this moment, a purple gold dragon soul also rushed out from the king's back. Battle soul? Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. Draconic penitentiary. The king's voice was like a bell, and a huge barrier instantly fell, shrouding Qin Feiyang and his 3,000 incarnations. That's right. Grandpa still has a trump card, and that's his innate superpower. Seeing the barrier appear, Ryuko couldn't help but feel refreshed. The eyes of the divine king, Jiang Yunshuang, the human race's supremacy, also flickered. The purple gold dragon soul, draconic penitentiary, what could that be? The white-eyed wolf and the others were surprised. But in the next moment, their faces changed color. They saw that the cultivation of Qin Feiyang and his 3,000 incarnations in the draconic penitentiary had plummeted from the great perfection, sovereign realm to the great perfection, sovereign realm. What kind of joke was this? In a battle of this level, a sudden drop in cultivation would be fatal. The most important thing was, ordinary battle souls were almost useless when they reached the great perfection sovereign realm. But the king's battle soul could actually suppress Qin Feiyang's cultivation by 1 realm. That's right, that was suppression. It wasn't like the white-eyed wolf depriving. Suppression wouldn't be lost forever. As long as the draconic penitentiary disappeared, the cultivation would immediately recover. But now, how could this draconic penitentiary disappear? On the battlefield, Qin Feiyang took a look at the barrier, then nodded in realization. So this is your trump card, as expected of the monarch. It seems that if I don't use all my means, I really won't be able to defeat you. As soon as he finished speaking, roar, accompanied by a dragon roar, the purple gold dragon soul soared into the sky. The eye of heaven instantly opened. That's right. This guy has the eye of heaven, so the battle soul can still be replicated. Frenzy patted his head. Can it really be replicated? Long Chan whispered. If even the king's draconic penitentiary could be replicated, then his god's domain must also be replicated. And the result proved. Not only could it be replicated, but it was also replicated in an instant, covering the king and his 3,000 incarnations. The king's cultivation also immediately plummeted to great perfection, sovereign realm. Bastard, Ryuko clenched his fists tightly. Originally, he thought that his grandfather could rely on the draconic penitentiary to kill Qin Feiyong. He was ready to celebrate, but he didn't expect that in less than a blink of an eye, Qin Feiyong replicated the draconic penitentiary. Eye of heaven, is it really so heaven-defying? Is there really no opponent? In the blink of an eye, the ultimate meaning of both sides collided once again. Both of their cultivation were suppressed to great perfection, sovereign realm. The situation didn't change at all. The king looked at Qin Feiyong with an extremely complicated expression. This is the descendant of his daughter in the Sky Cloud realm? Sure enough, he is more outstanding than the descendants of their purple-gold, divine dragon clan. Eye of heaven, 3,000 incarnations, the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. The will of the heavenly Tao. These strongest means had basically fallen into the hands of this child. His rise was unstoppable. Sigh. After a long time, the king sighed and said, I lost. And he lost to a human with purple-gold dragon blood, and a junior at that. An unprecedented sense of frustration rose in his heart. Ever since he became the king, he had never experienced failure again, and he had forgotten the taste of failure. It turned out that it was so painful. The divine king and the human race supreme looked at each other, and a sense of sympathy rose in their hearts, because they knew the king too well. Losing was already a huge blow to the king, not to mention losing to a junior and a descendant of his daughter in the Sky Cloud realm. Even this Qin Feiyong was at least the 4th generation descendant of the Qin clan, or even the 5th generation descendant. Otherwise, why would Qin Feiyong call the divine kingdom's princess ancestor? In fact, Qin Feiyong was really the 5th generation descendant of the Qin clan. Qin Batian, Emperor Hong, Emperor Chun, and Qin Feiyong's father. These were the 4th generation. Qin Feiyong happened to be the 5th generation, and the king was the father of the divine kingdom's princess, so this generation had to be added. Just imagine, a descendant 5 or 6 generations away actually defeated him who could bear this blow, not to mention the high and mighty king. Chapter 4022. I won. The white-eyed wolf murmured. Not bad, this kid. Even the monarch admitted defeat. It felt like a dream. The madman gritted his teeth and said, The inheritance of 15 ultimate intents is about to be in your hands. Are you excited? What are you thinking? All you think about is the inheritance. Have you thought about little Qin Zi's safety? The white-eyed wolf stared at him. The madman was stunned. He looked at the white-eyed wolf and said disdainfully, You're not a decent person, but you want to pretend. Do you know what this is? Pretending. Cough, cough. The white-eyed wolf coughed and smiled awkwardly. I hope there will be the laws of life and the laws of destruction in these 15 inheritances, because with these 2 inheritances he could activate the will of heaven. Look, your nature is immediately exposed. The madman rolled his eyes. Shut up. Suddenly, the golden small beast shouted without looking back. The madman and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. They raised their eyebrows and looked at the small beast's back. Brother Wolf, don't be impulsive. We can't beat it now, the madman said. I know, the white-eyed wolf murmured. The small beast's eyes were locked on Qin Feiyong and seemed to be looking forward to it. The madman and the white-eyed wolf also looked up. Although the king admitted defeat, the battle wasn't over. The ultimate intents continued to collide and the destructive aura spread in all directions. After a while, the previous situation appeared again. The king's ultimate intents were all shattered. Qin Feiyong still had dozens of kingdoms of life and death and hundreds of karma and destruction intents left. The remaining ultimates were like a pack of ferocious beasts as they charged towards the monarch. The king has admitted defeat. Stop! The divine king was startled and immediately shouted. Ryuko's face was also full of anxiety. However, Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear. There's no need to say anything more. The winner is king, and the loser is a bandit. The monarch waved his hand and calmly faced the incoming ultimate profound. Just as the monarch's blood was about to splatter across the sky, all of the ultimate mysteries suddenly stopped and hovered above the monarch. The little golden beast raised its eyebrows at the sight of this. Not killing? White-eyed wolf and madman were also stunned. However, on second thought, this man was the father of the princess of the divine kingdom and Qin Beishan's grandfather. Given Qin Feiyang's character, he would not be able to kill him. Furthermore, he had once promised the princess of the divine kingdom that he would show mercy to the people of the divine kingdom, especially the purple-gold divine dragons. Qin Feiyang was also struggling in his heart. If he didn't kill him, the monarch would definitely bring disaster to the Sky Cloud realm. This was betraying the trust that the common people had placed in him. But if he killed him, how could he face the princess and ancestors of the divine kingdom? One had to know. Until now, the ancestors had never seen their biological grandfather. It was really a dilemma on both sides. Sigh. Qin Feiyang sighed, looked at the monarch, and pleaded, "Promise me, don't hurt the creatures of the Sky Cloud realm anymore. In fact, we can live like a family." "A family," the monarch murmured, looked up at the sky and shook his head. "It will never be possible. This is our fate. Don't be stubborn, okay? Do you have to force me to kill you? I really don't want to do this. My ancestor, your grandson, has always been searching for his identity. If you let him know that his grandfather is still alive in this world, how happy would he be?" Qin Feiyang said angrily. "Grandson," the monarch's eyes trembled, and his expression became extremely complicated. "And your daughter, don't you want to get her forgiveness? In fact, she has always missed you. Can you put yourself in her shoes and think about it from her perspective? The grudges between the divine kingdom and the Sky Cloud realm can't continue to accumulate." Qin Feiyang's eyes were full of pleading. Madman and the others looked at each other, and also silently looked at the monarch. If the monarch could really change his mind, it would be a good thing for the people of the Qin clan and the entire Sky Cloud realm. War, power, interests, ambition, desire, are these things more important than family? If I had a choice, as long as I can live a peaceful life with my family, I am willing to give up everything I have now. Because in my eyes, nothing can be compared to family, lovers, and friends. Qin Feiyang sighed deeply. For him, these were all extravagant hopes that were unattainable. But for the monarch, this was a matter of decision. Why must he insist on starting a war, where not only hurt himself, but also the family around him and those innocent creatures? Was it worth it? When the monarch heard this, there was a trace of pain on his face. Yes, was it worth it? Until now, what did he get in return? Indecisive, it's hard to achieve great things. The small beast suddenly snorted, turned around, and angrily left. "Boss Frog, where are you going?" Ice Dragon was stunned and hurriedly asked. "It's annoying to look at," the little golden beast said without even turning its head. Then it disappeared from everyone's sight. Ice Dragon smiled helplessly and was about to chase after it, but Long Chin pulled him back. He turned to look at Long Chin and saw Long Chen's pleading eyes. He couldn't help but soften and secretly said, "Okay, I'll stay and have a good chat with you." Long Chin was overjoyed. He raised his head and continued to look at Qin Feiyang. He could understand Qin Feiyang's feelings. For Qin Feiyang, no matter what choice he made, it was a painful thing. The small beast said he was indecisive, but in fact he was not. Indecisiveness also depended on the person. If it were the divine king or the human race supreme, Qin Feiyang would definitely not show mercy based on his character. But the monarch was really different. Putting aside the relationship between the divine kingdom's princess and Qin Batian, Qin Feiyang himself also had an inseparable kinship with the monarch. On the battlefield, There was dead silence. Everyone was waiting for the monarch's answer. After a long, long time, the monarch shook his head and sighed. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "There are many things that you and I can't choose." "There is nothing that you can't choose, only whether you are willing to choose or not," Qin Feiyang said. "Then you can take it that I'm unwilling to choose." The monarch was silent for a moment, then raised his head and said, "You're challenging my limits." Qin Feiyang was furious. The various ultimate mysteries that he had stopped suddenly crashed down. Grandpa, Monarch, Ryuko, and the other three's faces changed color. But the monarch himself was very calm in the face of death. But at this time, an invisible will descended and blasted towards Qin Feiyang's ultimate mysteries. With a loud bang, dozens of ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death, hundreds of ultimate mysteries of the law of cause and effect, and the law of death were shattered on the spot. So ruthless at such a young age. Do you know that you are deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors? The ethereal voice sounded again. Even if I am deceiving my master and destroying my ancestors, it is still better than you not being inhumane. Qin Feiyang looked up at the sky and shouted angrily. "What did you say?" The ethereal voice carried a trace of hostility. "I said that you are inhumane and even worse than a beast. Do you hear me clearly now?" Qin Feiyang said word by word, his eyes full of anger. Without thinking, he knew that the person who really wanted to invade the Sky Cloud realm must be the ruler of the Divine Kingdom. "You are courting death." The invisible will suddenly turned into a torrent and rushed towards Qin Feiyang. But at this time, Ice Dragon took a step forward and raised his hand to slap the will. The will immediately collapsed and said angrily, "You said that you won't intervene personally before, and now you are going back on your word? Do you really want us to kill our way to the Divine Kingdom?" The voice was silent for a moment and said gloomily, "Fine, for 10,000 years I will not intervene. But after 10,000 years, if you and the heaven-swallowing beast come out to stop me again, then don't blame me for being impolite." After saying that, another will descended and swept up the monarch and the others before flying away like lightning. "Hey, hey, hey! Where is the inheritance of the ultimate mysteries?" The white-eyed wolf shouted. "I will send someone to send it to you." The ethereal voice responded and did not speak again. "It's finally over." Yun Ziang let out a long breath, as if relieved of a heavy burden. "Yes," the masked Azura nodded. "Everything that happened today was like riding a roller coaster. If it weren't for everyone's ability to bear it, they would have had a mental breakdown." The blood ancestor said, "Since it's over, then prepare to deal with the aftermath." The Feather Emperor looked at the madman and the others and said with a smile, "Go and have a good rest. Leave the aftermath to us." "Okay." The madman and the others nodded. This battle was indeed exhausting. Long Qin waved his hand and the demon ancestor appeared. "Thank you for your hard work." Long Qin looked at the demon ancestor. "It's nothing." The demon ancestor waved his hand and looked at Qin Feiyang. He couldn't help but sigh, because at this moment everyone had relaxed except for Qin Feiyang. He kept looking in the direction the monarch and the others left. The madman waved his hand, and Fire Lotus and the mermaid princess also came out of the blood demon tower. The two immediately walked to Qin Feiyang's side and looked at Qin Feiyang's side. They found that there was a smile on Qin Feiyang's face. He is actually smiling? The two girls were speechless. Looking at Qin Feiyang standing there silently, they were almost worried to death. That was because they all thought that Qin Feiyang was angry. After all, the ruler of the Divine Kingdom rescued the monarch from under his nose. "Feiyang, what are you smiling about?" The mermaid princess was suspicious. "It's nothing. I just understood something." Qin Feiyang smiled. "What is it?" Both of them had a curious look. "Why are you two like curious babies?" Qin Feiyang was speechless. With a thought, the 3,000 incarnations dissipated. He turned his head to look at Long Chin and the white-eyed wolf. No matter what, this crisis was resolved. The sky cloud realm could be peaceful for a while. Brother Chin, I will congratulate you later. I will also talk about some of my views on the monarch. Long Chin looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. Then he pulled Ice Dragon and turned to leave. Long Chin also followed. Don't come. Long Chen raised his hand to stop him. Why? Long Chin suddenly had a look of dissatisfaction. Because I am your big brother. After Long Chin finished speaking, he quickly left with Ice Dragon. Looking at the backs of the two, Long Chin was so angry that he stomped his feet. Some views on the monarch. Qin Feiyang looked at Long Chen's back. His eyes flickered. Did this guy also see something? But thinking about it, it made sense. With Long Chen's observation, he would not ignore these details. At the same time, White-Eyed Wolf looked at Long Chin jokingly and asked, You are not a wild child that they picked up, are you? Wild child. Long Chin was stunned. The next moment he reacted and said angrily, What did you say? Say it again. If you were not picked up, then why did the father and son exclude you? So pitiful. Why don't I help you find some biological parents out of kindness? White-Eyed Wolf's face was full of playfulness. Bastard. Long Chin was irritable. He gritted his teeth and pounced forward. Look. With such a bad temper, how can you marry in the future? Yun Ziang, Azura, are you willing to marry her? White-Eyed Wolf ran and shouted. He seemed to be quite energetic. Yun Ziang and Long Chin's faces darkened. Could he not lead the trouble to them? Chapter 40:23. Since when did the two of them become so close? The Feather Emperor and the other two walked over and looked at the White-Eyed Wolf and Long Chin suspiciously. Close. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Looking at the White-Eyed Wolf and Long Chin, it seemed that they were a little different from before. Senior brother, what's going on? Qin Feiyang turned to look at Madman and asked, Hey. Madman grinned and looked at the angry Long Chin with puffed cheeks and said, Actually, after interacting with her for a long time, you will also find her cute side. Cute? Qin Feiyang was stunned. This was really a little strange. Even Madman had changed his view of Long Chin. On the side, the demon ancestor looked at the White-Eyed Wolf and Long Chin with a trace of a smile in his eyes. It seemed that everything was developing in the best direction. Let's not talk about them first. Congratulations! You have finally comprehended the ultimate profound of the law of life and death. The blood ancestor looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. Thank you. Qin Feiyang smiled. Kid, you are really something. After coming out of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, you actually hid such an important thing from us. The Feather Emperor stared at Qin Feiyang unhappily. The little rabbit also looked unhappy. Didn't I intend to give you guys a surprise? Qin Feiyang smiled awkwardly. The two rolled their eyes. Qin Feiyang was silent for a moment before looking at everyone and asking, Are you guys unhappy that I didn't kill the king before? Why would we? Others don't know your situation, but don't we know? If it were us, we wouldn't be able to do it either. Madman patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder. The blood ancestor sighed and said, Actually, when you were about to kill the king, Feather Emperor was very worried. Worried? Qin Feiyang looked at Feather Emperor. Yes. After all, he's the father of my sister-in-law and my brother's father-in-law. Feather Emperor nodded. His expression was full of worry. Although it was already in the past, he would still have to face it in the future. How should he choose at that time? Qin Feiyang muttered to himself for a while. He looked at Emperor Yu and said, You don't have to worry about the monarch's matter. I will take care of it. When the time comes, I will give everyone a satisfactory explanation. All right. Feather Emperor smiled in relief. To be able to have such a descendant, he felt proud from the bottom of his heart. The blood ancestor said, "Then take a rest. We'll deal with the aftermath. We'll immediately inform the entire Sky Cloud realm that you've defeated the monarch. When we know about this, the morale of the Sky Cloud realm will definitely be different." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. Suddenly, he looked at the three of them and warned, "You must settle down the people of the Shun family village. Also, regarding the appearance of the ice dragon and the small beast, do not spread the news." "Understood." The three of them nodded, turned around, and left quickly. After Qin Feiyang saw the three of them off, he looked at everyone present and bowed sincerely. He said gratefully, "Thank you, everyone." This time, if it weren't for everyone desperately protecting him, he wouldn't have been able to wait for the arrival of the heavenly tribulation. This was all owed a favor. No need to thank me. After all, if we were in trouble, you would do the same. But now, you've reached the sky in a single bound. In the future, don't forget us, who once went through life and death with you. The masked Azura waved his hand and smiled faintly. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "If I say that I will never forget, it will be a bit pretentious, but I will remember it for the rest of my life." "You're not going to thank me?" At this time, Long Qin flew over while panting. "Aren't you chasing the white-eyed wolf?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "That bastard ran away. I can't catch up." Long Qin snorted coldly. Qin Feiyang looked at this woman. It seemed that she was really different from before. She was no longer so cold. "Is it so difficult for you to say thank you?" Long Qin looked at him angrily. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. "What's so difficult about it? Thank you. You're not sincere at all." Long Qin snorted and looked up in the direction where Long Chen and Ice Dragon disappeared. Her eyes were full of suspicion. In the distance, it was a broken mountain range. Long Chen and Ice Dragon stood side by side. Ice Dragon glanced at Long Chen, who was silent, and said with a smile, "Just say what you want to say." Long Chen took a deep breath and turned to face Ice Dragon. She asked, "Father, I can see that when you face Mother, you don't have the gentleness of a husband and wife. What's wrong with you? Did Mother do something wrong to you?" Ice Dragon's face suddenly stiffened, and he said with a wry smile, "You're too direct." "Didn't you ask me to say it directly?" Long Chen looked at him with grievance. Ice Dragon was helpless. He pondered for a while and sighed. "Your mother didn't do anything wrong to me. Then why are you so cold to her?" Long Chen was puzzled. "It's a long story. Back then, when I traveled to the ancient world, I accidentally met your mother. Perhaps you can imagine that a person like me won't easily fall in love with a woman. So when I first met your mother, I didn't take it to heart. At that time, the unlucky blood progenitor ran to the ancient world to show off his prowess. The dragon tribe was helpless against him. When I saw the situation, I decided to help the dragon tribe in the ancient world because we were all divine dragons. The blood ancestor was seriously injured and sealed by me. Since then, your mother has been following me, saying that it was to repay me. Isn't there a saying like this? Love grows with time. Then, ahem, an accident. Your mother became pregnant with you." Ice Dragon God looked a little embarrassed. Long Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. His appearance was an accident. Don't think too much. The accident I'm talking about is, we're all men, you know. Ice Dragon blushed. "All right. In any case, I'm the result of that accident," Long Chen said helplessly. "Ha!" Ice Dragon laughed dryly and continued. "Then I gave birth to your sister. To be honest, I was really happy when I saw you and your sister. I finally had a family, a pair of children, and a beautiful wife. But at this point, Ice Dragon's face suddenly showed a trace of anger. "What?" Long Chen's eyelids twitched. Ice Dragon said, "One day, I discovered Yi Zhong's existence." "Yi Zhong," Long Chen's heart trembled. Who in the dragons didn't know that Yi Zhong was infatuated with his mother? Could it be that his father was jealous? Don't think too much. I'm not at the point of being jealous. Ice Dragon glared at him. Then why? Long Chin was puzzled. Ice Dragon took a deep breath and sighed. This is because your mother doesn't have any feelings for me at all. The reason why she was with me was because she saw my strength and thought that I could bring benefits to the dragons. Impossible. Long Chin shook his head. Silly boy, this is the reality. Once, your mother kept Yi Zhong by her side. Do you think she felt guilty? No. She was using Yi Zhong's feelings for her to make Yi Zhong a chess piece in her hands. The Divine Dragon Palace is the best proof. Ice Dragon sighed. Long Chen looked flustered and wanted to explain. If you don't believe me, you can ask Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang is Yi Zhong's disciple. He already knew that your mother was using Yi Zhong, so he tried his best to persuade Yi Zhong to defect. Yi Zhong also came to his senses later. Otherwise, under your mother's manipulation, he would have become a sinner of the ancient world's human clan, because the divine dragon palace that he created has harmed too many humans. Ice Dragon shook his head. Long Chen was silent. Also, your mother was too ambitious, too ruthless and selfish. I'm not slandering her. You saw what she did in the ancient world with your own eyes. Not to mention humans, even other creatures are not worth mentioning in her eyes. So, when I saw her true colors, I began to deliberately distance myself from her. Ice Dragon sighed deeply. This was a mistake he had made in the heat of the moment. Long Chin lowered his head and said, So if it weren't for Qin, and me, you wouldn't have come to visit Mother. Although it's a bit heartless, it's true. I was able to bring her to the Sky Cloud realm and give her so many divine items. It's all because of you and your sister. Now that you're also a man, you should be able to understand the feeling of being deceived by a woman. So I can't let go of this matter. If you and your sister blame me, then there's nothing I can do. Ice Dragon said. Long Chen was silent. That's enough. This is a matter between your mother and me. It has nothing to do with you and Qin, so you don't have to worry about it. Ice Dragon smiled slightly. You're my and Qin's biological parents. How can I not worry? Long Chen muttered. Ice Dragon rolled his eyes and said, If you really have the time, you might as well worry about your own matters. What matters do I have? Long Chen was taken aback and looked at him in puzzlement. Ice Dragon said in surprise, You're already so old. Don't you have any thoughts? What thoughts? Long Chen was more and more puzzled. Getting married and having children. Are you going to be a bachelor for the rest of your life? Ice Dragon was speechless. Why was this brat so stubborn? Long Chen was stunned. Let me tell you, you have to pass on the family line for me. You really have to learn more about this from Qin Feiyang. Ice Dragon said. Ahem. Long Chen coughed a few times and said with an embarrassed smile, Well, this matter is not urgent. Not urgent. Ice Dragon was speechless. He knocked Long Chen's forehead hard and scolded, You're really a blockhead. All right, I'm leaving. You're leaving? Long Chen hurriedly looked at Ice Dragon. His eager eyes seemed to say, Stay! I'll come back when you find a wife. Remember, I'm your father's example. You don't need to find a wife who is beautiful or powerful, as long as she really likes you. After saying that, Ice Dragon stepped into the air and left. Long Chen's mouth twitched and he shouted, If Mother changes, will you forgive her? Ice Dragon stopped and pondered for a while. He said without looking back, Wait until she changes. Then he disappeared under Long Chen's pitiful gaze. Sigh. After a while, Long Chen sighed, turned around and walked toward the Shun family village. Chapter 4024. above the Shen family village. Qin Feiyang and the others had almost recovered from their injuries, because now Qin Feiyang had grasped the ultimate meaning of the law of life. Even if you turned into a pile of meat paste, you would soon be alive and kicking. Where did the white-eyed wolf go? Why hasn't he come back yet? Madman suddenly realized that something was wrong. The white-eyed wolf had disappeared for too long. Wait. Yunzhang looked up into the distance and frowned. The battle between Heavenly Lord Ji and that young man seems to have disappeared. It really disappeared. After the battle ended, they were unable to suppress their joy and almost forgot about the young man. But who is he? He actually grasped the ultimate meaning of the 6 strongest laws. This is not something an ordinary person can do, and he even has 3,000 incarnations. This is too strange. Madman frowned. The identity of this young man was simply a mystery. No matter how he did it, as long as he is not our enemy. Qin Feiyang smiled. In fact, he also couldn't figure out the 3,000 incarnations. Moreover, why did he pretend to be his ancestor? Was it really just to take advantage of him? But according to his understanding of the young man, he didn't seem to be such a boring person. But what they didn't know was that somewhere in the Western continent, 3 figures stood together. It was Ice Dragon, Small Beast, and the young man. Small Beast stared at the young man angrily and asked, "Kid, what are you doing? Who told you to fight in the Sky Cloud realm? You called me here just to blame me?" The young man was stunned and couldn't help but frown. There were also serious injuries on his body. It seemed that he didn't gain any advantage in the fight with Heavenly Lord Ji. Nonsense. If anything happens to you, how will we explain it to your father? Small Beast said angrily. The young man pursed his lips and said, "Don't mention that old man. When I left, he said he didn't care about my life or death." Ice Dragon and Small Beast looked at each other helplessly. "Are you done?" "If I'm done, I'm leaving." The young man was very impatient. If Qin Feiyang and the others were to see the scene, their jaws would definitely drop from shock. How dare he act so presumptuously in front of Small Beast and Ice Dragon? This was the first person. "Are you still impatient? I'm telling you, come back with us now. Don't cause trouble here." Small Beast's face darkened. Hey, are you kidding me? Am I causing trouble? If it weren't for me, Heavenly Lord Ji would have destroyed the Sky Cloud realm long ago. Besides, it wasn't easy for me to borrow an identity, and I can fight openly. This is the time for fun. I won't go back even if you beat me to death. The young man shook his head, revealing a stubborn expression. "What do you mean?" Ice Dragon and Small Beast looked at him suspiciously. "I am Qin Batian, the son of the princess of the Divine Kingdom and the Human Emperor. Therefore, whether it is the 3,000 incarnations or other means, the people of the Divine Kingdom will not suspect anything." The young man said with a sinister smile, "Is this why you pretended to be Qin Batian?" Ice Dragon and Small Beast looked at each other in dismay. This kid was too much of a troublemaker. Yes. Otherwise, I would be too bored to do anything. Okay, that's it. You can do whatever you want. Anyway, don't bother me. By the way, Uncle Ice Dragon, I will help you take good care of your son and daughter." After saying that, the young man turned around and ran away. Ice Dragon and Small Beast looked at each other, their faces full of helplessness. Brother is back. At this time, White-Eyed Wolf finally came back. He waved at Qin Feiyang and the others from afar. "You dare to come back?" Long Qin's eyes suddenly spat fire. "Stop it. I will be angry if you continue." White-Eyed Wolf hurriedly glared at Long Qin and said with a dark face, "Afraid of you?" Long Qin snorted. Okay, I am afraid of you. I have something important to say." White-Eyed Wolf walked to Qin Feiyang and said with a frown, "That young man is gone." Gone. Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. Yes, just now I went to look for him. But when I rushed to the battlefield, he and Heavenly Lord G were gone. White-Eyed Wolf said, Heavenly Lord G must have left with the monarch and the others. As for this young man, Qin Feiyong pondered for a while and said with a smile, Anyway, he is still in the sky cloud realm. We will meet him sooner or later. Actually, I want to find him to join us. Now that you have comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, even the monarch is no match for you. Now, we have completely changed from passive to active and transferred the battlefield to the divine kingdom. But the strength of the divine kingdom is unfathomable. Although you can defeat the monarch, you may not be able to stop those old antiques of the divine kingdom. So, to be safe, we have to drag this young man with us. White-Eyed Wolf smiled slyly. But I have also invited him. But he has not replied to my message. I guess there is no hope. Qin Feiyong shook his head. What are you talking about? All of them look so miserable. Accompanied by a faint laugh, Long Qin stepped on the air and came over. Everyone looked up and saw that only Long Qin came back. Long Qin immediately flew over and asked, Where is father? He left. Long Qin smiled. He left just like that? Long Qin's face suddenly turned pale and said, Brother, did you really pick me up? Huh. Long Chen was stunned and puzzled. Why do you say that? Otherwise, why didn't father tell me when he left? I think, as that bastard White-Eyed Wolf said, I am just a wild girl that you picked up. Long Qin lowered her head, looking wronged. Long Chen raised his eyebrows slightly, looked up at White-Eyed Wolf, and said angrily, What nonsense are you talking about? Just kidding. White-Eyed Wolf smiled embarrassedly. Long Chen rolled his eyes, rubbed Long Qin's head, and said with a smile, Don't think so much. Hasn't father always been like this? If you don't believe me, I will accompany you to find father and do a blood test. What do you mean? A blood test? Don't make it sound like I was picked up. Long Qin was dissatisfied. Yes. Long Qin nodded and did not forget to glare at White-Eyed Wolf. It's my fault. White-Eyed Wolf smiled apologetically. He did not expect that a casual joke would make Long Qin take it so seriously. After calming Long Qin down, Long Chen looked at Qin Feiyong and said with a smile, Congratulations! You're doing the same? Qin Feiyong was speechless. Long Chen shook his head, smiled, and asked, The divine kingdom hasn't sent the inheritance yet. No. Do you think they will go back on their word? Li Zhongxing frowned. I don't think so. Qiao Shui hesitated and said, It will be embarrassing for the ruler of the divine kingdom to go back on their word. That depends on whether they are afraid of being embarrassed or not. If they are not afraid, we can only watch. Old Poison could not help but say, Don't worry about them. Long Chen waved his hand, looked at Qin Feiyong and asked, Did Emperor Yu and the others go to deal with the aftermath? Yes. Qin Feiyong nodded. Then send a message to them and tell them not to spread the news about father and the others, because father and the others do not want to attract too much attention. Long Qin said, Don't worry. I have already told them about this. Qin Feiyong smiled. Told them? Long Chen was taken aback, nodded, and said with a smile, All right then. Since you have worked so hard for so long, why don't we sit down and chat while drinking tea? Okay. Qin Feiyong nodded. With a wave of his hand, a group of people immediately appeared in the Devil's Land. Young Master. Master. The people gathered in the Devil's Land immediately swarmed over. I'm sorry to have made you worry. Qin Feiyong glanced at everyone and smiled apologetically. You have been so good to us. It is only right for us to be worried. Pai Lupi said with an annoyed smile. Qin Feiyong laughed, looked at Pei Dason and Pei Hongyu and said with a smile, The two of you can return to Zhongzhou in the future. The affairs of the Black Tortoise world will continue to be handed over to Pai Lupi and Theta Wang. Huh. The brother and sister's faces turned pale. Don't misunderstand. I don't have any prejudice against you now. It's not that I don't trust you. I asked you to return to Zhongzhou because you have family. Go back and accompany your family. At the same time, you can calm down and cultivate well. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. But the brother and sister were still a little flustered. We're doing this for your own good. You have seen the strength of the divine kingdom with your own eyes. If you don't cultivate hard and make yourself stronger, you won't even be qualified to be cannon fodder in the future. Madman raised his eyebrows. Yes, the brother and sister shrank their necks and hurriedly nodded. In fact, they had seen Qin Feiyang's attitude towards them now, and they no longer had the disgust they had in the past. And in these years they had indeed changed a lot. However, it was also because they had been in the Devil's Land all year round and managed the affairs of the Black Tortoise world that they had gradually become accustomed to this kind of life. Suddenly letting them leave, they were still a little uncomfortable in their hearts. Qin Feiyang looked at the brother and sister, and then looked at the 6,000 secret guards, and said, "Not only them, you also have to cultivate desperately for me." Back then, I organized a group of secret guards so that at the critical moment you can step forward bravely and save the world. Such a big responsibility. Someone smiled bitterly. In the past, they had never thought of such a problem. This was because in the past, saving lives was simply a joke to them. In short, they were just a group of lowly ants. Why should they care about them? But now, after following Qin Feiyang for so many years, they had learned what it meant to be responsible and responsible. It is precisely because of this great responsibility that I have spared no effort to cultivate you all these years. The door of potential, the epitome of law, these resources, I would rather not have them myself and give them to you all first. So I hope that you all will not disappoint my expectations, and even more so, not let outsiders think that I, Qin Feiyang, have raised a group of trash. Tell me, can you all do it? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes, the 6,000 secret guards roared, their voices like a bell, resounding in all directions. Qin Feiyang nodded in satisfaction and said with a smile, "Good, I look forward to your rise. In the future, when comprehending the profound meaning of law, if you encounter difficulties or bottlenecks, don't feel embarrassed. Find whoever you can. Face is not something that can be eaten." Yes, everyone bowed in response. All right then, all of you are dismissed. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Hearing this, everyone immediately turned around and flew toward the courtyard, not far away. As the number of people continued to increase, the courtyard here was almost a town. Senior Sword Emperor. Qin Feiyang called out to Sword Emperor and the group of elders. What's the matter? Everyone turned around and looked at him in confusion. Chapter 4025. Qin Feiyang walked over and whispered, "Don't take what I said just now to heart. I wasn't talking to you." The Sword Emperor and the others were stunned. I was afraid that you would think too much, so I specially explained it. Qin Feiyang scratched his head. Although he was very strong now and was the #1 person in the Sky Cloud realm, in front of these old people he would always be a child. Hearing this, the Sword Emperor and the others couldn't help but laugh. The Mermaid Emperor said discontentedly, "You brat, I didn't want to scold you, but you just had to ask for it. Are we such petty people?" Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded again and again. He naturally didn't dare to neglect the Mermaid Emperor. After all, he was the ancestor of the Mermaid Princess. Enough. We know that. No matter how hard we old guys work, we can't catch up to these shadow guards. The Blackwing Emperor waved his hand. That's not what I meant. You really misunderstood. From the beginning, I brought you to the Black Tortoise realm to let you live a comfortable life. I never thought of letting you take action and worry about mundane matters. Qin Feiyang hurriedly explained. The Mermaid Emperor and the others looked at each other and sighed. See, you all dislike us for coming. You all. Qin Feiyang was a little at a loss. Ha ha! All of a sudden they burst into laughter. The Mermaid Emperor shook his head and said, I'm just teasing you. Don't worry, we won't join in the fun, but it's really boring to stay in the Devil's Land all day. Indeed, the Blackwing Emperor nodded. The Black Tortoise Realm is so big, you all can go out and walk around. Qin Feiyang said, How many years have we been in the Black Tortoise Realm? Which place haven't you been to? We've been everywhere. The White Wing Emperor also shook his head. Qin Feiyang said, Then I can't help it. I can't let you go to the Sky Cloud Realm, right? I'm worried. There's a way. The Mermaid Emperor chuckled and gave the Blackwing Emperor and the others a look. They all nodded with a smile. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but have an ominous premonition. He asked cautiously, What is it? It's simple. The Mermaid Emperor glanced at the Mermaid Princess behind him and laughed hoarsely. You two should hurry up and have a few children. Then we old men will be very busy. It was indeed a trap. Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. The Mermaid Princess, who was standing behind him, also blushed. Good luck. The Mermaid Emperor patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder and looked at Long Qin, the crazy one, and the others with a smile. He said, The same goes for all of you. Young people, don't be so restrained. Indulge when it's time to do so. Otherwise, where will the incense come from? Long Qin and the others were also stunned. Zhuo Xiaoxian and Huo Wu, who were standing beside the crazy one and the white-eyed wolf, had their cheeks as red as apples. Even Long Qin lowered his head shyly. All right, I won't disturb you. The Mermaid Emperor waved his hand and left with the Sword Emperor and the others with a smile. Ahem. The white-eyed wolf coughed and hugged Huo Wu. He laughed and said, Sister Foam, since the old man said so, shall we go and indulge ourselves? What did you say? Huo Wu immediately twisted the white-eyed wolf's ear and said angrily, Last time at the Sky Bell Divine Treasury, you said those nonsense to Qin Feiyang and the crazy one. I haven't settled the score with you yet. Wife, please spare me. I was wrong. The white-eyed wolf immediately wailed. Were you wrong? Huo Wu leaned over to the white-eyed wolf's ear and whispered, I see that you are quite intimate with Long Qin outside. Do you want to take in another concubine? That's a good idea. The white-eyed wolf's eyes lit up. Are you okay? Huo Wu's face darkened. She pulled the white-eyed wolf's ear hard and almost pulled it off. No, it's about to be pulled off. Ouch, ouch, ouch. The miserable howl sounded like a pig being slaughtered. The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang and the others for help. However, the group of people were gloating as they flew towards the tea garden. You have no loyalty. The white-eyed wolf cursed angrily. He thought to himself, This jealous woman is really scary. Huo Wu let go of her hand, looked at the white-eyed wolf, and asked, Tell me honestly, are you interested in Long Qin? The white-eyed wolf rubbed his ear. Why did she suddenly become so calm? No, this was the calm before the storm. Huo Wu sighed and said, Actually, as long as you don't hide it from me, I won't object. After all, it will be easier for me to take care of you. Really? The white-eyed wolf asked. Do you really have such thoughts? She turned hostile immediately and pulled the white-eyed wolf's ear again. Her face was full of anger. I'm devoted to you, you bastard. But you still want to take in a concubine? In the tea garden, Qin Feiyang and the others sat around the table. A pot of ancient dragon god tea filled the tea garden with the fragrance of tea. Listening to the white-eyed wolf's miserable howl, Long Qin shook his head and sighed. Who would have thought that the arrogant, golden-winged wolf king outside would become a kitten when he came to the black tortoise world? No. He's not a kitten, he's a little lamb, a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. The madman grinned and took out a jar of unparalleled divine brew. While listening to the white-eyed wolf's miserable howl, he drank happily. My girl is the best. She just sat there quietly obedient and sensible. Don't drink so much. Shuo Xiaoxian, who was standing beside him, glared at him. The madman's expression froze. He hurriedly said to himself, so many people are watching. Leave me some face. When we get home later, you can do whatever you want to me. Who wants to do anything to you? Shuo Xiaoxian secretly rolled her eyes. Look, my Miss Xiaoxian is still the gentle, virtuous, and considerate one. The madman grabbed Shuo Xiaoxian's hand, his face full of pride. Shuo Xiaoxian blushed. Ahem, care about the feelings of us, single dogs. The masked Azura coughed and lowered his head to drink his tea. I just want to torture you single dogs. How about it? Go ahead and be envious. The madman laughed loudly. He was really arrogant. The masked Azura's mouth twitched. He didn't say anything else. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. At the same time, the demon ancestor glanced at the group of people while drinking his tea. He seemed to be hesitating about something. Qin Feiyang put down his teacup and grabbed the mermaid princess's hand. He looked at Long Qin, who was sitting opposite him, and asked, Brother Long, not long ago, you said that you want to talk about your opinion of the king. What do you mean by that? As soon as he said that, it immediately attracted everyone's attention. Long Chen looked at the others, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a faint smile, Don't tell me you don't have an opinion. Tell me your opinion first. Qin Feiyang smiled. Okay. Long Qin nodded. Wait. But suddenly, the demon ancestor spoke. He put down the teacup in his hand and said with a smile, Let's talk about something else first. Just at this time, the white-eyed wolf walked over with Fire Dance. Fire Dance, who was incomparably valiant before, was now gentle and kind. She hugged the white-eyed wolf's arm and walked leisurely. The white-eyed wolf's appearance was extremely miserable, especially his ear. It was almost deformed. Brother, you really don't have any loyalty. Walking into the tea garden, the white-eyed wolf glared at everyone fiercely. Then he took out a jar of unparalleled divine brew. Let's not drink today. Look, everyone is drinking tea. It's not good for you to drink. Fire Dance smiled gently. The white-eyed wolf stared and immediately pointed at the madman. Isn't he drinking too? Before he finished, Fire Dance's eyes flashed coldly. The white-eyed wolf was immediately stunned and said with a flattering smile, Okay, I won't drink. Drinking tea is good for health. Little Qin Zi, quickly pour the tea. He flattered Fire Dance with a smile, but when it came to Qin Feiyang, he immediately became fierce. I didn't provoke you? Qin Feiyang was speechless. He poured a cup of tea for the white-eyed wolf. Letting this wolf cub drink tea was really too difficult for him. However, what no one noticed was that Long Qin was hiding a sound transmission godstone in his hand. There was also a hint of ridicule in his eyes. Qin Feiyang handed the teacup to the white-eyed wolf, then looked at the demon ancestor and smiled. What do you want to say? It's about Long Qin bribing Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing. The demon ancestor said. Long Chen's pupils immediately shrank. The white-eyed wolf and Frenzy couldn't help but raise their eyebrows and stare at the demon ancestor angrily. Bribing Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing? Qin Feiyang was stunned. What was going on? Mermaid Princess Fire Dance, Zhuo Xiaoxian, Yun Ziang, Master Azura, Li Feng, Li Zhongxing, and Long Qin were also suspicious. Don't stare at me like that. The demon ancestor helplessly looked at Frenzy and the white-eyed wolf and smiled. If there wasn't today's battle, I definitely wouldn't have brought up this matter in front of Long Qin. Then what do you mean now? If you say it like that, how can we set a trap for him in the future? The white-eyed wolf was very angry. He had always been brooding over this matter, and he had been waiting for Qin Feiyang to come out of seclusion to plan a trap for Longqin. In any case, he wanted Longqin to suffer a double loss after trying to trick him. But now, since the demon ancestor had brought it up in front of them, there was no way to target him anymore. Like I said before, if there wasn't today's incident, I wouldn't stop you from setting a trap for him. But today, in order to protect Qin Feiyang, whether it was Long Chan or Long Qin, they risked their lives. They didn't even flinch in the face of death several times. And Frenzy, have you forgotten? When you were facing Heavenly Lord Ji, you personally said that all the grudges in the past would be written off. And you also said that you would fight side by side in the next life. And White-Eyed Wolf, you also shouted very loudly at that time. The demon ancestor smiled. Frenzy and the White-Eyed Wolf's expressions froze. They really did say that. Personally, I think that although there is indeed an irreconcilable grudge between the two of you, since both of you can say such things in front of Heavenly Lord Ji, it proves that you don't hate each other in your hearts. So what I want to say is that since we have already started this, why don't we take advantage of this moment to completely end it once and for all, so that we don't have to constantly be on guard against you scheming against me and me scheming against you all the time in the future. How tiring would that be? The demon ancestor sighed. Only by completely resolving these grudges could everyone truly work together to deal with the divine kingdom. Chapter 4026. Madman and White-Eyed Wolf became silent after hearing this. Although they didn't like Long Chen and his sister, the effort they had put in this time was obvious to all. What's going on? Can you tell us first? Qin Feiyang looked at them. It seemed to be quite serious. White-Eyed Wolf glanced at Long Chen and said, Little Chin, do you want to tell us yourself, or do you want us to help you? Can you not call me that? It's too awkward to hear. Long Chen smiled bitterly, put down his teacup, and sighed. I really underestimated Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing. I thought they would be tempted, but I didn't expect them to tell you guys in a blink of an eye. You didn't underestimate them. They were indeed tempted. Mu Qing even wanted to scheme against Dong Zhengyang. Madman harumphed coldly. Then how did you guys find out? Long Qin looked at them suspiciously. Devil ancestor. After meeting you, Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing came back. The devil ancestor had already found out something was wrong. Madman explained the situation briefly for Qin Feiyang to hear. So that's how it is. Long Qin nodded and looked at the devil ancestor with admiration. No wonder you're the one who once forced Qin Feiyang into a desperate situation. What happened in the past is a sin. The devil ancestor shook his head. Whenever he thought of the sins he committed in Great Qin, he couldn't help but feel remorseful. That's why he was working hard to resolve the grudges between them, because he knew this kind of hatred the best. If he didn't resolve the grudges between them now, this hatred would only grow deeper in the future. It might even evolve into the current situation between the sky-cloud boundary and the divine kingdom. At that time, the sky-cloud boundary would be in even more danger. Qin Feiyang finally understood that Long Chen was preparing for a rainy day. This move was really ingenious. Mu Qing and Mu Tianyang both possessed the strongest fighting soul. Once he convinced the two of them to cooperate with Long Chen, he could really deal a fatal blow to them from behind. Qin Feiyang asked, Where are Mu Qing and the others now? Inside the Blood Demon Tower. Madman said. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Call them out. Madman waved his hand, and 3 figures appeared. They were Mu Qing, Mu Tianyang, and Dong Zhengyang. Brother Qin, congratulations. Dong Zhengyang cupped his hands and said, The gap between us is getting bigger and bigger. Mu Tianyang also shook his head and sighed. Qin Feiyang laughed involuntarily and said, It will be the same after your fighting souls have evolved. Easier said than done. The two of them sighed and sat on the empty seats next to him. However, Mu Qing stood at the side with an extremely panicked look. Qin Feiyang glanced at Mu Qing and turned to look at Madman. He asked suspiciously, "Where are old Pei and the others?" "They have been on the battlefield." As for now, they should have left the land of buried gods. They might be in the demonic palace in the eastern continent because we have been cultivating in seclusion in the demonic palace all these years. Madman said. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at Mu Qing with a smile. "Have you really not felt how I have treated you all these years?" Mu Qing lowered her head and was so ashamed that she could not show her face. "The door of potential is open for you. The nomological miniatures are all yours. I even let you go with me when I go to Big Brother's place to cultivate in seclusion. I think I have done well enough, but why can't I move you? If I remember correctly, we have known each other longer than Mu Tianyang and the demon ancestor. Back then, when your sister died in the hands of Zhuge I was a little sad. Moreover, we are about the same age. I always thought that you would be more reasonable than Mu Tianyang, but now your actions are not even 1/10 of Mu Tianyang's. At least Mu Tianyang still remembers Dong Xingyang saving his life, but you have completely forgotten about it. If Dong Xingyang didn't save you back then, would you still be alive?" Qin Feiyang's face was filled with disappointment. Hearing these words, Mu Qing clenched her fists and nodded. "Yes, I was wrong in this matter. But didn't I already swear a blood oath? What else do you want? If you do something wrong, you naturally have to bear the corresponding consequences. How about this? I'll invite you to stay in Soul Sealing Valley for a while." Qin Feiyang smiled. Soul Sealing Valley. Just hearing this name was enough to make people shudder. Not to mention staying there for a while, it was simply torture. Qin Feiyang looked at the white-eyed wolf and smiled. "Thank you for making the trip and bringing her there. What's so hard about it? I'm happy to help." The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth and stood up to look at Mu Qing. "Let's go. I'll take you to enjoy life." "Qin Feiyang, you can't do this to me. Even Dong Xingyang himself has chosen to forgive me. What right do you have to hold on to it?" Mu Qing hurriedly ran behind Mu Tianyang to seek protection and shouted, "Because I have a better conscience than you. I've always believed in one truth. If you do something wrong, you have to pay the price. Moreover, by doing this, you've offended not only Dong Xingyang, but also our trust in you." Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold. He looked at the white-eyed wolf and said, "If he doesn't cooperate, you know what to do." The white-eyed wolf laughed again and again. Was there a need to say it? Qin Feiyang looked at Mu Qing again and said with a faint smile, "Don't worry. You're going there to reflect on your mistakes. It won't torment you for too long. After 3 years, you can come out of Soul Sealing Valley." After saying that, Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The white-eyed wolf picked up Mu Qing and rushed towards Soul Sealing Valley. "No, ancestor, save me. I don't want to go to Soul Sealing Valley," Mu Qing wailed. Qin Feiyang, Mu Tianyang, looked at Qin Feiyang anxiously. "I'm doing this for his own good. If you continue to be so lenient with him, sooner or later, he will get into big trouble. At that time, I'm afraid we don't even need to do anything. Others will kill him." Qin Feiyang looked at Mu Tianyang and said in a deep voice, "That's right. This is like educating a child. If you can't bear to punish him now, society will help you educate him in the future. When that time comes, the beating he will face will not be so simple." The madman grinned. "Sigh." Mu Tianyang sighed and fell silent. 3 years is very fast. In the outside world, it's just a blink of an eye. The demon ancestor smiled at Mu Tianyang, then looked at Qin Feiyang and Long Chen and said, "Now let's solve your problem." Long Chen drank his tea and remained silent. Qin Feiyang also picked up his teacup. As he drank, he smiled and said, "Brother Long, do you want me to express my opinion first? After all, I'm in the wrong this time. Long Qin shook his head. Thinking about it now, his behavior this time was indeed a bit stupid. However, he really didn't expect to be discovered by the demon ancestor. It seemed that the demon ancestor was the one he should fight for the most. However, it was almost impossible to fight for the demon ancestor, because after that battle, the demon ancestor had already repented. In short, the once heinous demon ancestor had disappeared. The demon ancestor sitting in front of them now was filled with justice and benevolence. He would never bow to anyone for the inheritance of the ultimate profound. Since you said so, then I'll talk about my inner thoughts first. Qin Feiyang let out a breath and said with a smile, I didn't have a good impression of your mother and sister in the past, but for you, Long Qin, I have only admiration and appreciation. Don't forget, the person you hate, am risking my life to protect you this time. Long Qin snorted coldly. I know. That's why I said in the past. Now, I have gratitude and appreciation for you in my heart. Qin Feiyang smiled. I don't need your appreciation. Long Qin had a look of disdain. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly, looked at Long Qin, and continued. Let's talk about the grudges between us. Back then, it was your mother who attacked my ancestor first. She wanted to snatch my ancestor's bloodline power and let you fuse with it. Later, she attacked me for the same purpose. I know that. Actually, I don't need it at all. Long Qin nodded. You really don't need it, but your mother doesn't think so. This is the fuse between us. In fact, whether it's me or my ancestor, we only hope for the world to be peaceful and all things to coexist. Therefore, my ancestor created the Dragon Slayer Palace to fight against you dragons. Later, because of me and Senior Brother Feng Zi's participation, as well as the support of the billions of creatures in the ancient world, we won the war. At the same time, other than you and your mother, the dragons were all wiped out. To be honest, when the war ended back then, I had already let go of this hatred in my heart. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Are you sure you've let go? Long Qin frowned. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned, then smiled and said, Of course, the matter between me and your father definitely won't end like this. But this is a grudge between me and him. It has nothing to do with you. But we're his children, Long Qin said. I know, but isn't there a saying that goes like this? Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Qin Feiyang smiled. Long Qin snorted coldly and said, Don't look so magnanimous. You can let go, but we can't. After all, this is the hatred of the extermination of our clan. But have you ever thought about how many innocent living beings were slaughtered by your dragon clan when you ruled the ancient world? For example, Fire Lotus. Back then, she died in the hands of your ancestral dragons. If I hadn't met her, I'm afraid she would still be wandering the land of the dead. Qin Feiyang sighed. Fire Lotus also clenched her hands, but she soon loosened them, because on the day of the extermination of the dragons, she had already let go of the hatred in her heart. Long Qin was speechless. As for coming to the Sky Cloud realm, the Dragon God sword and the Sacred Ice sword attacked me. This was all instructed by your father. It has nothing to do with you. Of course, it may have something to do with your mother. But now it's no longer important. After all, you have sacrificed so much for the Sky Cloud realm, and even risked your lives to protect me. Even if I want to kill her, I have to consider your face, right? As for the dragons of the Sky Cloud realm, back then I said that whether it's the dragons, the Foam people, or the Kirin clan, once Long Zun and the other two die, the past grudges will be written off. So now, except for Ice Dragon and Small Beast, I have no hatred for anyone. This is what I think in my heart. The truest thought. Qin Feiyang smiled. Chapter 4027. After saying that, Qin Feiyang calmly drank his tea. Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang's face. It was very sincere, without any trace of lying. But thinking about it, it made sense. The dragons of the ancient world had already paid the price for their sins. There was indeed no need to hate them. Moreover, Long Chen's contribution to the Sky Cloud realm was enough to make up for everything. Demon Ancestor smiled and said, Qin Feiyang has already said his thoughts. Long Chen, you should also express your position. The cycle of cause and effect is all retribution. Everything in the ancient world was caused by the brutality of the dragons. The creatures of the ancient world can't tolerate us dragons. It's reasonable for them to rise up and resist. As far as I'm concerned, the dragons of the ancient world will go to the point of extinction. It's all our fault. So, regarding this matter, I have never blamed anyone. I believe that all of you can see this, but speaking of this, Long Qin couldn't help but look at Long Qin. In his mind, Long Zun's figure appeared. I can understand. You also have no choice. But for your mother and sister, this matter can only be explained by you. It's useless for us to say more. Instead, it will cause their disgust and make the situation even more chaotic. Demon Ancestor said, Thank you. Long Qin smiled gratefully. However, today we sit down to talk about these things, not to see your mother and sister's attitude, but mainly to see your attitude. What is your attitude? Now that everyone is already comrades who have gone through life and death together, you might as well say it directly. Demon Ancestor smiled. My attitude? It's naturally best if we can get along peacefully. Actually, when we were in the ancient world, I wanted to make friends with Qin Feiyang, Lunatic, and White-Eyed Wolf, because I feel that fighting with them is very reliable. However, what I admire most about them is their sense of brotherhood, never abandoning their companions, and caring for the common people. Long Chen smiled slightly. Isn't this the same as what we thought? If it weren't for our different standpoints, we would have become friends in the ancient world. Senior brother, don't you think so? Qin Feiyang looked at Lunatic and smiled. Yes, Lunatic responded weakly. He had indeed let go of the previous grudges. But this time, Long Qin plotted against them behind their backs, which made it difficult for him to let go. There's nothing to be calculative about. Although he schemed against us behind our backs, he also risked his life to help us. Let's call it even. Qin Feiyang. The madman frowned and suddenly stared at the demon ancestor as he said, unhappily, You really are a good person now. If you were in Great Qin, would you be like this and have such conflict with Old Qin? Cough, cough. It's all in the past. Can we not mention it? All right. Lunatic sighed helplessly and looked at Long Qin. Not long ago, I saw you and your sister fighting side by side with us, and it really touched my heart. As long as you don't plot against us behind our backs in the future, I'll pretend that nothing happened in the past. I don't agree. Long Qin immediately shouted. I don't agree either. Another voice sounded. It was Li Feng. At this moment, Li Feng stared at Long Qin and his sister, his blood-red eyes filled with killing intent. Lunatic Ancestor was stunned and slapped his head hard. He had actually neglected Li Feng, an important factor. Qin Feiyang, Lunatic, and Long Qin were all easy to talk to. After all, they had always admired each other. However, Li Feng hated the Dragon Clan to the bone. Moreover, it was also because of this hatred that he had walked all the way to where he was today. Li Feng had devoured countless living beings in the past. Why did he do this? It was nothing more than wanting to take revenge for the villagers. In order to take revenge, he worked hard to become stronger and scrupulous. Now, he had finally grown up. But before he could take revenge, suddenly, everyone wanted to write off the past grudges. He definitely could not accept it. Although we can let it go, this kid can't. We have to understand as well. After all, we have witnessed the destruction of Cloud Mountain Village with our own eyes. The tragic death of the villagers is too big of a blow to him. Lunatic sighed secretly. Yes, Qin Feiyong nodded. You really want me to let it go? Sure. Let Longzuin go to the ancient world, kneel at the entrance of the village, kowtow and repent. Li Feng said. What did you say? Long Qin turned to stare at Li Feng, his eyes flashing coldly. Did I say something wrong? This is the sin committed by dragons, Li Feng said angrily. Then, was it my mother who killed the people in your village? Qin Feiyong has said before that every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. If you want to take revenge, go find the people who massacred your village. Don't be like a mad dog, biting people everywhere. Long Qin snorted coldly. Qin, Long Qin reprimanded. Why are you reprimanding me? It's clearly him who wants to put this groundless crime on my mother. Long Qin said angrily. Although the village wasn't massacred by Longzuin, it was you dragons who massacred the village. As the ruler of the dragons, doesn't your mother have any responsibility? Li Feng roared, his eyes were bloodshot. The murderous aura around his body rose like a blood-colored flame. According to what you said, if you accidentally fell, wouldn't you blame the god of creation? Because it was the god of creation who created this world. The two of them were tit for tat. What are you arguing about? If you don't agree, go out and fight. Whoever wins has the final say. Lunatic looked at the two of them impatiently. Fine. Li Feng stood up and looked at Long Qin. If you can defeat me, we will write off this debt. Sure. If you can defeat me, I will kneel down and apologize to you in front of everyone on behalf of my mother. Long Qin also stood up with a swoosh and stared at Li Feng. It's a deal? Li Feng asked. It's a deal, Long Qin said. Li Feng took a deep breath, turned his head and looked at Qin Feiyong and said, Big brother Qin, I don't want to make things difficult for you, so I want to use my own method to solve this matter. I ask for your support. Qin Feiyong looked at Li Feng, looked at Long Qin and asked, What do you think? Sure, Long Qin nodded. Since he wanted to solve it, then he might as well solve it completely, lest he drag it out and cause more trouble. If that's the case, Qin Feiyong looked at Long Qin and Li Feng, took a deep breath, stood up and said, Then I'll fulfill your wish, but you are no longer children, so you have to keep your word. Finished. He turned to look at Li Zhongxing and the other two and said with a smile, You guys go and recuperate first. All right. The three of them nodded. Immediately, Qin Feiyong waved his hand, except for Li Zhongxing and the other two. Everyone present immediately appeared outside. Outside, the fluctuations from the previous battle had not dissipated, not to mention this short period of time. Even if it was 100 or 80 years, this land would not be able to recover its vitality, because the damage was too serious, unless there was enough life energy. Long Qin took a step out and landed 1,000 miles away. He turned to look at Li Feng and said, This battle, regardless of life and death. Hearsay. Li Feng smiled and also took a step out, landing in front of Long Qin and said, Fight to the death. Afraid of you? Long Qin laughed coldly. The ultimate meaning of the three strongest laws was instantly activated, and the aura of destruction surged in all directions like a tide. At the same time, Li Feng also began to use his puppet real body. The three puppet real bodies were like three merciless death gods. Boom! The ultimate meaning of the space-time law was activated, and 4 galaxies fell from the sky, exuding the power to destroy the world. You're using your trump card? The demon ancestor frowned. Otherwise, do you think this is a game, a joke? Madman sneered. He had absolute confidence in Li Feng. Although Li Feng only mastered 1 ultimate meaning of the strongest law, and Long Qin mastered 3, Li Feng had the puppet real bodies. 3 puppet real bodies, plus himself, meant that Long Qin was now facing 4 Li Fengs. 3 ultimate meanings of the strongest laws were not enough. Boom! Sure enough, accompanied by a loud noise, Longqin's 3 ultimate meanings of the strongest laws were mercilessly crushed on the spot. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out, and his face was slightly pale. It seemed that Li Feng had the upper hand, but Qin Feiyang inadvertently discovered that Long Chen's face at this moment did not have the slightest bit of worry for Long Qin. Could it be? What other tricks did Long Qin have up his sleeve? If that was the case, this method must be able to threaten Li Feng. Otherwise Long Chen would not be so calm. However, since Long Qin still had tricks up his sleeve, why didn't he see him use it when facing Heavenly Lord Ji and the monarch? On the battlefield, you dare to compete with me with that little bit of strength of yours? Li Feng's expression was extremely ferocious, and the remaining ultimate meaning of the space-time law flooded the sky, crazily attacking Long Qin. He did not show any mercy at all. His eyes were full of murderous intent. Who are you looking down on? Long Qin laughed angrily. A wave of space-time power rolled out. A river of stars descended from the sky, slamming into the river of stars that Li Feng had summoned. 2 ultimate profound meanings were shattered in response. Li Feng was also forced to retreat, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. This madman was stunned. If he remembered correctly, the strongest laws that Long Qin mastered seemed to be the time array, the death law, and the karma law. How could there be another ultimate meaning of the space-time law? Most importantly, he had never seen Long Qin open it before. As expected, Qin Feiyang murmured and turned to Long Qin. It seems that your sister has integrated another ultimate meaning in these years. Long Qin smiled but did not say anything. Hearing this, the demon ancestor and the others looked at each other and could not help but smile bitterly. It was indeed different to have a powerful father. Inheritances were easy to obtain. If it wasn't for the ice dragon, Long Qin probably wouldn't have been able to comprehend the ultimate profundity of an ordinary law, let alone 4 ultimate profundities of ultimate laws. What was the saying again? It was true that comparisons were odious. Zhuo Xiaoxian was confused. If she has integrated another ultimate meaning, why didn't she activate it when facing Heavenly Lord Ji and the monarch? Silly girl. Madman grabbed Zhuo Xiaoxian's hand and explained. How powerful are Heavenly Lord Ji and the monarch? Even if she activates the ultimate meaning of the space-time law, what's the use? That's right. Even if she has mastered 6 ultimate meanings of the strongest laws and integrated them with the will of heaven, she can't defeat Heavenly Lord Ji and the monarch, let alone 4 ultimate meanings of the strongest laws. After all, both of them have 3,000 incarnations. Long Qin nodded and sighed. Thinking of the 3,000 incarnations, he could not help but feel tired. Chapter 4028. On the battlefield, Li Feng stabilized his body and raised his head to look at Long Qin. I really didn't expect you to have hidden an ultimate meaning. There are still many things you didn't expect. Long Qin sneered. The ultimate meaning of the 4 strongest laws appeared out of thin air. So what if you have more ultimate meanings? Is this something you comprehended by yourself? Isn't it all because of your father? Otherwise, what are you? Li Feng's face was full of ridicule. So what if it is? At least I have a father to rely on, but do you have one? Long Qin retorted. This sentence undoubtedly ignited the anger in Li Feng's heart. Carrying a monstrous aura, he charged forward. I have touched your sore spot, right? Orphan. Long Qin sneered. Damn woman, I will kill you. Li Feng roared. Who taught you to be so arrogant when you're an orphan? Long Qin wasn't afraid at all. Boom! Both of them clashed. Terrifying fluctuations spread in all directions. This is bad. Qin Feiyang whispered. What's wrong? Madman looked at him, puzzled. Even if Long Qin grasped the ultimate meaning of the four strongest laws, he shouldn't be Li Feng's opponent. After all, Li Feng still had the ultimate meaning of the slaughter law. Can't you see that Long Qin is deliberately provoking him? Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. You mean Long Qin also knows that Li Feng has the ultimate meaning of the slaughter law, so he used this method to anger Li Feng and make him lose his mind? Madman was bewildered. Yes, once Li Feng loses his mind, I'm afraid he will forget about the fact that he grasps the ultimate meaning of the slaughter law. In the face of such a battle, Long Qin can still maintain a calm mind and target Li Feng's weakness. We really can't underestimate him, Qin Feiyang mumbled. Then do we need to remind Li Feng? Madman asked. This is their battle. It's best if we don't intervene. Moreover, for Li Feng, this is also a rare tempering. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and then silently watched the battlefield. The battle had reached its climax. Long Qin kept provoking Li Feng with words. Li Feng had completely lost his mind and had not activated the ultimate meaning of the law of slaughter. Think about it. What would happen if a person who had lost his rationality fought with a person who was calm and collected? There was no suspense. Those who had lost their rationality would gradually be at a disadvantage. Just like this, Li Feng was gradually suppressed by Long Qin. Even with the help of the 3 true body puppets, it was useless. Wounds kept appearing on his body, making him look extremely miserable. Bang! After several hundred rounds, Long Qin seized the opportunity and slapped Li Feng's chest with his palm. Li Feng immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his entire body flew out like a meteor, dyeing the sky red with his blood. I can't beat her. What's going on? I seem to have forgotten something. But what exactly is it? Calm down, you must calm down. Qin Dage has taught me more than once that the stronger the enemy, the more important it is to maintain a calm mind. Li Feng mumbled, shaking his head. Boom! At the same time, Long Qin did not give Li Feng the slightest chance to counterattack. 4 ultimate mysteries were activated, releasing monstrous divine power, and charged toward Li Feng at lightning speed. That's right. I still have the ultimate mystery of the law of slaughter. As the crisis of death shrouded him, Li Feng suddenly quivered and finally thought of the law of slaughter. Go to hell! Immediately, he roared, and the 2 ultimate mysteries of the law of space and time and the law of slaughter instantly appeared. At the same time, the 3 true body puppets had also activated 2 ultimate mysteries. In total, there were 8 ultimate mysteries. Rumble, the aura of the 8 ultimate mysteries surged, destroying everything in all directions. Accompanied by a loud explosion that shook heaven and earth, Long Qin's 4 ultimate law ultimate mysteries and Li Feng's 4 ultimate law ultimate mysteries were destroyed in the void. Immediately after, Li Feng and the true body puppets 4 ultimate mysteries of the law of slaughter transformed into a blood sword, rolling up monstrous waves of blood and madly charged toward Long Qin. I didn't expect that I would be able to wake up at the critical moment. Long Qin was infuriated. A terrifying sovereign aura spread out from his body. Angel's sword. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. Although the angel's sword had been shattered in the collision with Heavenly Lord Ji and the monarch, it was still a mid-level sovereign weapon. Even if it was heavily damaged, it could still unleash a destructive divine power. Brother Long Chen, this is not fair. Shuo Shaoxian looked at Long Chen and said. To this, Long Chen just smiled. You really are an idiot. Frenzy looked at Shuo Shaoxian helplessly. This little girl was really too naive. He really dared to let her go out alone in the future. Otherwise, if she was sold, she would have to help count the money. What kind of battle was this? It was a battle of life and death. It was not a spar, nor was it a joke. Everything depended on one's means. Therefore, There was no such thing as fair or unfair. There was only victory and defeat. Clang! The heavenly god sword attacked. Although it was heavily injured, its divine power was still hard to block. The ultimate profundities of the four ordinary laws were annihilated in an instant. Following that terrifying sharpness, they surged towards Li Feng in an overwhelming manner. Li Feng's expression changed drastically, and he quickly dodged. But the angel's sword was not an ordinary weapon. It was a sovereign weapon and had its own consciousness. Seeing Li Feng dodge, it did not chase after him. Instead, it directly slashed at the three puppets. The three puppets were annihilated. At this moment, the angel's sword attacked Li Feng. Long Qin also attacked furiously. Li Feng did not give up. Two ultimate profound appeared and blasted at the angel's sword. With a loud bang, the angel's sword was sent flying and its light dimmed. Obviously, the current angel's sword could only unleash the power of one ultimate law. In other words, its current power was about the same as a low-level sovereign weapon. It could be seen how serious the damage was when it fought with Heavenly Lord Ji and the monarch. However, although the heavenly god sword was sent flying, Long Qin was also with the young master. The ultimate profound of the time law turned into a translucent long sword and placed it across Li Feng's neck. There was a bloody mark on his nose, and streams of blood flowed down. "You lost," Long Qin said. Li Feng clenched his fists, his eyes filled with unwillingness. "Don't be unconvinced. This is not a spar, nor is it a game. I have a sovereign weapon. This is my ability and ability. You don't have it. That's your problem. So don't make me look down on you." Long Qin waved her hand, and the time divine sword dissipated. The angel's sword also turned into a stream of light and disappeared into her body. Li Feng lowered his head, and his eyes kept trembling. Drops of tears fell. These were tears of unwillingness. After cultivating so hard for so many years, he actually lost to Long Qin. Was the blood feud of the village really over? Could everyone rest in peace? "Ah, I'm really a piece of trash," Li Feng roared at the sky, tears blurring his vision. "This is not good." "He's been hit," Lunatic whispered. "He's shouldering too much. Even if he wins this battle against Long Qin, it's impossible for him to really let it go." Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. How could he comfort him? But suddenly, Long Qin took a step forward and landed in front of Li Feng. "Huh." Everyone looked at Long Qin suspiciously. "If you want to laugh, laugh." Li Feng glanced at Long Qin and turned to leave. Long Qin's heart trembled. From Li Feng's eyes there was no color, as if he was a walking corpse. It seemed that the blow this time was really not small. "I'm not here to laugh at you." Long Qin looked at Li Feng's back and said. After saying that, under everyone's shocked gaze, he knelt in the void. "Brother?" Long Qin hurried forward, pulled Long Qin, and asked, "What are you doing? Why did you kneel to him?" "You kneeled to me?" When Li Feng heard this, he suddenly trembled and turned to look at Long Qin. He was still kneeling in the void, and said angrily, "Are you humiliating me? I've been defeated by your sister, and you still kneel to me?" "I don't mean to humiliate you. I'm not kneeling to you, I'm kneeling to the souls of those who died tragically in Yunshan Village." Yunshan Village was massacred by the dragon's clansmen. As the prince of the dragons, I also have an unshirkable responsibility. I apologize to you on behalf of them. After saying that, Long Qin bowed. Li Feng lowered his head and looked at Long Qin, his hands tightly clenched together. At this moment, his heart was extremely complicated. While blaming Long Zun, he was also blaming Long Qin and Long Qin. But he never thought that Long Qin would actually kneel in the void and beg for forgiveness at this moment. One must know, he was defeated by Long Qin. But Long Qin still chose to do this. He was moved. The hatred that had been buried in his heart also loosened. At the same time, he was in pain again. Did he really have to let go of this hatred? But his heart was in a mess. He didn't know how much time had passed. He turned around, looked at the horizon, and said, "I admire you, just like I admire Qin Dage, because you are a responsible man. But this hatred has long been deeply rooted in my heart. It's really too difficult for me to let it go. Get up. I want to be alone and think about it." After saying that, Li Feng took a step forward and left without looking back. Long Chen raised his head and looked at Li Feng's back. A trace of a smile gradually crept into his eyes, because he could feel that the hatred in Li Feng's heart was changing. Long Qin pulled Long Chen up and said discontentedly, "I've never seen such a foolish brother like you. Fortune favors fools." Long Chen smiled slightly. There was no use in running away from these things. He could only face it. See, this is Long Chen. For the sake of the overall situation, he can let go of everything. We can't not cherish such a person. The demon ancestor laughed secretly. Yes, Qin Feiyang nodded. Even Lunatic was full of admiration for Long Chen at this moment. In order to eliminate the hatred in Li Feng's heart, he could actually let go of a man's dignity. If it were him, he would definitely not be able to do it. He hoped that Li Feng could walk out of the hatred. After all, the dead can't be resurrected. The living should live well and not be controlled by hatred. If one was always bound by hatred, even if one could live a peaceful life, one's life would lose its meaning and would not even have the most basic happiness. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.